On a day when my husband, who usually remains in his room, had stepped out briefly, the intercom at my house began buzzing incessantly. I answered the door to find my mother-in-law standing there, visibly excited. Surprised by the unexpected visit, I asked, "Hello, mother-in-law. What brings you here at this hour?" "First of all, you should answer the intercom promptly. Making me wait is quite impolite, don't you think?" "I apologize. I was caught up with some work." "Work? It's hard to believe you're doing anything substantial from home. I suspect you're just lounging around, aren't you?" "That's not the case at all. I am genuinely busy with my work." "I don't want to hear any excuses. You live a comfortable life here every day, benefiting from my son's high salary, and I find it unfair. My son and I plan to start a new chapter here, just the two of us. Please make arrangements to move out." With a self-satisfied grin, she pulled a piece of paper from an envelope and handed it to me. "Here, take a look," she said. The document was marked Divorce Papers, with my husband's section already completed. "Wait, are these divorce papers?" I asked, astonished. "Yes. He's come to realize he can't continue with you. So sign these and vacate the premises immediately." She looked triumphant, clearly anticipating my shock. But I wasn't as rattled as she expected. With a calm smile, I signed the papers. Internally, I found her misunderstanding amusing. She had no idea what was really going on. "My name is Nancy. I work from home as a freelance writer and editor, drawing on my past experience with a publishing company to sustain a steady income. During my time at the publishing company, late nights and weekend work were common, but the pay was excellent. Thanks to my salary, bonuses, and copyright-related rewards, I was able to save a significant amount. Despite the inherent instability of freelancing, I've been able to live comfortably. I met my husband, Dylan, while we were both employed at the publishing company. He was an aspiring writer with a passion that resonated with me, and my support for his dreams gradually blossomed into love. Our shared career ambitions made our early married life fulfilling. After we married, I transitioned for freelancing full-time, working from home. I had believed that my husband and his family understood and valued my career and income. However, over time, it became clear that they struggled to appreciate the nature of my work. My in-laws, holding more traditional values, found it difficult to grasp the concept of working from home and viewed freelancing as unstable compared to Dylan's steady employment, leading them to undervalue my contributions. Dylan began bragging to his parents about his success as a renowned writer, which only intensified my in-laws' cold attitude towards me. Whenever we met, their sarcasm was evident. They'd remark, "Oh, it's Nancy, who never seems to work. What brings you here today? Looking for a job recommendation?" "Mother-in-law, if you're worried about our living expenses, I assure you I'm earning well, so there's no need for concern," I replied. "Really? You sound quite assured. Perhaps you should show more gratitude to Dylan. Without him, wouldn't you be in a tight spot?" My mother-in-law's traditional values shaped her perspective. In her era, women typically managed the household while men worked outside. Consequently, seeing me work from home, she likely assumed I was neglecting domestic duties. This situation highlighted the generational and cultural misunderstandings and challenges within our family. Mother-in-law, freelancing allows one to earn a good income without needing to go to an office. Thanks to technological advancements, we can work from virtually anywhere, and my job fits that model. However, my mother-in-law reacted with irritation, saying, "All you do is talk back. You're such an unpleasant daughter-in-law. It doesn't look right for a young woman to be spending all day at home on a computer." Lately, these exchanges had become increasingly frequent, and I was growing weary of them. I bit back my response, thinking, not this topic again. Internally, I knew I was the primary breadwinner and managed most of the housework, but I kept that to myself. Initially, her complaints were only voiced when Dylan wasn't around, but recently she had started expressing them more openly, especially during family dinners at her home. These gatherings felt more like critique sessions than family meals. Even though I was invited, there was always only food for Dylan, with no place set for me, which made the situation uncomfortable. Additionally, I suspected she was speaking ill of me to other relatives, as I caught unpleasant whispered comments. I was often caught off guard by her and my father-in-law's attitudes, and Dylan's silence only added to my frustration. Moreover, they saw Dylan as a successful author and frequently relied on him for financial support, often asking him to purchase things. This support was funded by my earnings, which started as a small amount but had recently escalated to nearly $2,000 a month for his parents. I decided to confront Dylan about his use of my earnings. "I want you to stop giving my money to your parents without asking me first," I said. His response was colder than I anticipated. "You're making money while relaxing at home, right? It's easy money. Why not let my parents benefit from it?" "Wait, Dylan, do you really think I'm just lounging around at home to earn my money?" I was taken aback by his words. It felt like the final straw. I felt betrayed, confused, and heartbroken. Despite the challenges with his parents and our differing backgrounds, I had believed Dylan was on my side, which gave me the strength to endure. His words shattered that reassurance. Dylan, whom I thought understood my efforts and feelings, had joined those who mocked me behind my back. I remembered our first date when he spoke passionately about his work, his dreams, and his values. His enthusiasm and sincerity had drawn me to him. But lately he seemed to have lost that drive, spending his days aimlessly, often absorbed in games. This new side of him was a stark contrast to the person I had fallen for. Games aren't inherently bad, but his obsession with them had led him to neglect his passion for writing, which both saddened and injured me. I began to question whether I could continue my future with Dylan. The more I thought about it, the more bleak my future with him appeared. Consequently, I decided to divorce him and secretly began searching for a new place to live. I looked online for apartments suited for singles and visited several properties, prioritizing those with a quiet environment and strong security. Eventually, I chose a place that met my needs. One day, while Dylan was out, he usually spent his time playing games in his room. My mother-in-law paid an unexpected visit. I answered the door in surprise, and without waiting for an invitation, she plopped down on the living room sofa and declared, "Nancy, you need to leave this place." "Why are you saying this all of a sudden?" I was too stunned to react immediately. "It's quite clear. You're not good at housekeeping, and despite Dylan's success as a popular author, you haven't improved. Most importantly, you're failing at your work. I've explained this to you before. It's a misunderstanding." I tried to clarify. But my mother-in-law cut me off with a placid smile. "I intend to move in here and support Dylan. Taking care of him will be far better than dealing with that troublesome old lady." "Are you referring to Dylan's grandmother?" "Yes, that's the one. Even though I've done so much for her, she's always finding fault and showing no gratitude. I'm fed up with it. If I move in, I can look after Dylan, allowing him to focus on his work without any interruptions. Isn't that great?" With that, she pulled a piece of paper from the envelope she was holding. "So, would you please leave this house immediately?" I accepted the divorce papers she offered. They were already signed by Dylan. "Did Dylan actually sign these?" I asked, disbelief in my voice. "Yes," she said, a hint of amusement in her tone. "I suggested to Dylan that a divorce might be best for both of you. It seems he was quite eager to agree, as he signed them without a second thought." The events unfolded rapidly. I gathered my pre-packed bags and decided to move into a new apartment immediately. As I relocated, I also filed the divorce papers, marking the beginning of a new chapter. My new life turned out to be smoother and more comfortable than I had anticipated. My modest apartment, furnished only with the essentials, provided a simplicity that helped me concentrate. Free from complications, each day was calm and serene. I woke up to natural light streaming through the windows and the soothing sound of birds chirping in the distance. I could rise whenever I chose, enjoy a leisurely breakfast, and plan my day at my own pace. Immersed in my work, time seemed to fly by. It was a relief not to worry about the expectations and scrutiny of Dylan and my in-laws, allowing me to work in peace and at my own rhythm. One day, as I was deeply focused on my work at my desk, my smartphone buzzed with a call from Dylan. After a moment of hesitation, I decided to answer. "Nancy, please come back right now." Dylan's voice was urgent and desperate. "Why the sudden request?" I asked, puzzled. To be honest, my parents discovered I wasn't as successful as I claimed to be. I'm under a lot of pressure now. They're even talking about moving in and relying on my earnings. I really need you to come back. I understand, but returning isn't so straightforward. You signed the divorce papers, remember? Yes, and so did I. We've both chosen separate paths now, so you'll need to handle your own problems. It's no longer my concern. His voice was tinged with a mix of desperation and sorrow, but I remained firm. We've gone our separate ways. I could hear him sigh heavily on the other end. I get it, but since the divorce, I've faced many difficulties and significant expenses. I need help with costs like care fees for our parents and compensations for the disruptions caused. Why are you bringing this up now? I asked, confused. Your decisions have messed up all my plans. How could you? Do you remember how you and your parents used to mock me when we were married? I didn't want to say this, but now you seem like an adversary. Your financial troubles are due to your own failures at work. Figure it out on your own. I'm tired of being your fallback. With that, I ended the call. Despite numerous attempts to reach me afterward, I blocked Dylan and changed my number. A few months later, I happened to pass by the location of his former house. Instead of the house, there was now an empty lot. A nearby resident filled me in on the recent turmoil, mentioning that the police had been called several times. The neighbor's words seemed to carry the weight of the situation. You must have had a tough time too. There must have been a lot of upheaval leading to the loss of his house. I stood there for a moment, reflecting on the past. The outcome seemed like a form of karma. Dylan's small deception had led to a consequence more dramatic than any fiction he might have written. From that point on, I resolved to live with honesty, sharing my feelings and thoughts openly without pretense. No matter how difficult things became, I understood the importance of truth and valuing genuine emotions.
Finally, our new house was ready, and I could hardly contain my excitement about starting this new chapter. But then, out of nowhere, my in-laws arrived. "We'll be moving in here," they declared. "Please ask your parents to vacate the premises." Stunned, I looked to my husband for support, but he just took a deep breath and said, "Do as they've asked. Please inform your parents gently." Without another word, my in-laws began unloading their belongings. As they eagerly explored their new home, I couldn't help but ask, "Do you even realize whose house this is?" "My name is Nina. I'm 35 and have been happily married to my husband Matt for 3 years. We don't have children yet, but our life together is full of love. Lately, I've been worried about my aging parents. Their mobility has been declining, and it's been on my mind. So, I proposed to Matt that we move in with them. He was completely on board, saying, 'Living with your parents is no problem. It'll allow us to take care of them, and you'll have peace of mind. It's a win-win situation.'" "Thank you, Matt," I said, overwhelmed with gratitude for having such a considerate husband. We began making plans to live together, but executing this idea right away proved challenging. My family home is quite far from the city, which complicates our work commute. Neither of us can drive, making it impractical to live there. Moving my parents to the city isn't feasible either. Our current rental is small, suitable for 2, but cramped for 4, and adding a child would only make it worse. It seemed like there were no easy solutions. Then it hit me, why don't we take a bold step and build a spacious new house? When I shared the idea with Matt, his face brightened. "That's a fantastic idea. A new spacious home would be perfect for all of us." With his enthusiasm, we began planning our new house. When I told my parents, they initially felt guilty about us building a home for them. However, after I explained our reasoning, they understood and were thrilled. Their happiness was a balm to my heart. Later, my husband and I went to a real estate agency to finalize the details. We explored locations close to hospitals for my parents' health and near train stations for easier commuting. We also carefully discussed the specifics of the house. Although I sought input from my parents, they seemed reluctant about moving in with us. Fortunately, my husband had many valuable suggestions, which made the planning process much smoother. Gradually, our vision for the dream home began to take shape, and the prospect was thrilling. After much discussion and research online, we finalized the plans for our new house and were ready to consult with builders. "We're nearly there with the preparations," I said. "Building a house has turned out to be more challenging than I expected." My husband commented, Balancing this with work makes progress slow, doesn't it? We invested a lot of time into our plans, but the results were immensely satisfying. The blueprint for the house, which we meticulously crafted, far exceeded our expectations. We consulted with various real estate agents and conducted thorough online research to reach this point. Now, all that's left is to eagerly await the completion of the house. It will take some time, but the excitement and anticipation are boundless. However, as the project progressed, my in-laws started reaching out more frequently. "Dear, we heard you're building a new house. Is that right?" "Yes, that's correct. We're aiming to finish it by the end of the year." "How wonderful. I'm so impressed with Matt's efforts. To keep us updated with all the details. We'll visit you soon." "Okay, sure," I replied. Surprised by my mother-in-law's enthusiasm, my husband and I decided to visit their house over the weekend. They welcomed us with warm smiles. Building a brand new home is such a joyous event. Just thinking about it is exciting, isn't it? My father-in-law said, almost as if he were reminiscing about his own experiences. "Yes, we're very excited. We're hoping the construction goes smoothly and finishes quickly so we can move into the new house as soon as possible." We all shared a laugh. It's definitely an exciting topic. By the way, would you like to see the blueprints? Following my mother-in-law's request, my husband pulled out his phone to show them the design he had photographed. "Oh, it's quite spacious," she observed. "And so many rooms." "Yes, well, we'll be living with my parents, so we needed the extra space," I explained. "Wait, you're all moving in together?" Both of my in-laws looked at my husband in disbelief. "So you two are going to live with Nina's parents?" "Yes," my husband replied. "Since my parents are getting older, we suggested living together, which led us to decide to build a new house." "Really? I see. Moving in together." Their tone shifted noticeably, hinting at their discomfort. To shift the focus, I attempted to change the subject. "How have you both been? How's your health?" "We're doing well. No major changes, just the usual routine. But tell us more about the new house. Which room will your parents be using?" "Well, we're currently planning for this room," my husband explained, pointing to the blueprint. He seemed unaware of the subtle shift in mood, but I could see that their expressions grew tense when they learned my parents would be moving in. It might feel as if my parents were receiving special treatment. I felt a twinge of guilt but hoped they would understand our decision given my parents' situation. However, it was clear they were struggling to accept it. The construction of our home was progressing smoothly, and each visit revealed how close it was to completion. As my husband often said, I was caught between the eagerness to move in quickly and the desire for everything to be perfect. My parents visited midway through the construction and were thrilled with the progress, which made me feel grateful to be able to provide this for them. However, I was concerned that my husband had been visiting his parents almost every weekend lately. "Are you planning to visit your parents again this weekend?" "Yeah, I am," he replied. "You've been visiting them quite frequently since the start of the year," I noted. "I want to show my appreciation to them as well. That's why I've been making an effort to visit them on my days off." "I understand. Matt, you're so considerate. Should I come along?" I asked, concerned that his parents might feel disappointed. Perhaps they had hoped to live with us, and I thought visiting them might be a good gesture of goodwill. But my husband reassured me, "It's all right. I can manage it on my own," and he left for his parents' home. I decided to honor his choice and promised to support him as needed. Time passed quickly, and our new house was finally ready. On moving day, we loaded the car with boxes and headed to our new home, brimming with excitement. When we arrived and saw the house, I was so overwhelmed that I couldn't help but exclaim, "Wow, our new home." It marked the start of a new chapter. I began envisioning our life there, cooking while watching my husband and our future child playing in the yard or enjoying a family barbecue. These thoughts only fueled my excitement further. My parents, who were set to move in with us, called to let us know they'd be delayed due to traffic. They told us to go ahead and start settling in, but I said, "We'll wait for you," intending to share the same with my husband. To our surprise, my husband's parents showed up unexpectedly. I was stunned and stared at their car in disbelief. "Why are they here?" I wondered as they stepped out of the car, smiles wide, and walked towards us. "Look at this magnificent house. It's impressive enough to show off to our friends," they said. "Yes, it's the house that Matt and I carefully planned," I responded. "Nina, you have excellent taste," my mother-in-law added. "Well, I suppose I can give her credit for that," I said. "Thank you." To my surprise, they began unloading the considerable amount of luggage from their car. Startled, I quickly asked, "Mother-in-law, father-in-law, why do you have so much stuff? What are you planning to do?" Their reply was equally unexpected. "What do you mean? We're moving our things into this house." "What? You're planning to live here starting today? You'll need to ask your parents to leave," they said. "What? Why are you doing this?" I asked in disbelief. With a hint of frustration, my mother-in-law explained, "As a new bride, it's customary to prioritize your husband's family. We should be the ones moving into the new house. Once you understand that, please let your parents know we're busy moving our things." Feeling overwhelmed, I turned to my husband for support. He took a deep breath and said, "Do as she says. Just let your parents know gently." "But this house was intended for me and my parents. I can't accept this decision," I protested. He responded with visible irritation. "Didn't my mom just say that it's natural for a wife to prioritize her husband's family? We can address your parents' situation later." I was in disbelief. It was clear that my husband was either heavily influenced by his parents or had always shared their perspective, which was now more evident than ever. "Come on, help with the moving," he said. With that, my in-laws began unloading their belongings, even though neither my parents nor I had entered the house yet. They proceeded without permission. "Oh, how wonderful. The interior is just splendid," they exclaimed, eagerly exploring the house. I confronted them. "Do you know whose house this is?" "What?" they responded, momentarily taken aback. After a brief pause, they turned to face me. "Whose house?" "Of course, it's Matt's house. Are you suggesting you have a claim to it?" "Since you and Matt are living here and he's put so much into building this house, you have no right to make any claims without letting me explain first." My in-laws seemed to have jumped to conclusions and were blaming me. It appeared my husband hadn't shared details about our finances with them. "Why would your parents live in Matt's house in the first place?" they questioned. "Yes, it's strange. Poor Matt, having such a demanding wife and parents," they added. I was at my breaking point. Why was I being criticized for their misunderstandings? "If you intend to live here, then Matt should compensate for the amount spent," I said. "I've contributed to this house," I said. My in-laws stared at me in disbelief. "How much are you claiming to have paid? It must be a small amount, maybe $800, they mocked. My husband, looking uncomfortable, said nothing. I turned to him, challenging, "Are you being honest? How high and mighty do you think you are?" "That's," he hesitated. "What are you insinuating?" my mother-in-law demanded, her tone authoritative. Seeing that my husband was unwilling to address the issue, I decided to clarify things myself. "I pay for this house entirely with my savings. If you plan to live here, I expect repayment of $355,000 for the cost of the house." My in-laws were stunned, their mouths agape and eyes wide. They turned to my husband for confirmation. "Matt, is this true? Did Nina really buy this house?" they asked. My husband nodded slightly. "Yes, Nina bought the house. She got a promotion quickly and now earns more than I do. But you've been working for a long time as well. And you graduated from a prestigious university. Shouldn't you be earning a decent salary too?" "Well, I made a significant mistake at work. I can't get promoted and even had a pay cut. Now I'm earning as much as a new employee," my husband admitted. When he revealed this, my in-laws were at a loss for words. We never imagined Matt would be in such a situation. After a moment of silence, their attitude shifted entirely. They began apologizing to me. "Nina, we're truly sorry for our earlier comments. We misunderstood everything. Please forgive us and let us stay in this house." "What?" They continued to apologize profusely, and my husband bowed deeply. "Please, it's my fault for not telling you sooner. Let us stay here with you." I was completely taken aback by their words and actions. "No matter how much you plead, I can't accept this. I built this house to live with my parents. If that's not possible, there's no point in having this house. If you want to live here, you'll need to pay me $355,000. "We don't have that kind of money," they replied. "Then it seems you'll need to find somewhere else to go." "Wait, we sold our previous home and moved out. If we're evicted from here, we have nowhere else to go. Nina, please let us stay. Your parents can live with us too." What are they thinking? Living under one roof with a couple and both sets of parents is unmanageable. I can't agree to that. If you sold your house, you must have some funds left. Why not use that to find a flat? Hearing this, tears welled up in my in-laws' eyes. The truth is, we lost a significant amount in a bad investment. The money from selling our house and our retirement savings went toward paying off that debt. We have nothing left. I'm retired, and my wife has been a housewife for years, so she can't work at this age. You're our only hope." Despite the heartfelt plea, the situation was a result of their own financial mistakes. "If you need help, shouldn't you be asking your son for support?" "I'm not in a position to support strangers," I replied. "Why not? Aren't we family too?" they asked. "That's too much to ask. Can't you at least help us a little?" they pleaded. "It's impossible. I can't even fathom living with someone whose family is trying to take over our home. Matt, let's get a divorce." "What? Wait a minute. I can't even think about a divorce." "I'm sorry, but I can't forgive this. Please leave right now." When I mentioned divorce, my husband panicked. My in-laws continued to plead, but I had already lost any willingness to forgive them. "If you plan to stay here, I'll call the police," I warned, causing my in-laws to flee in fear. My husband, dismayed, protested, "I'm still your husband. I should have the right to stay here." "If you insist, I'll take legal action," I replied. His demeanor changed instantly. Understanding that a lawsuit could cost him his job, he quickly gathered his belongings and left. Shortly after he departed, my parents arrived. They were confused by his absence but were shocked when I explained the situation. They thanked me, saying, "Thank you for standing up for us." I wish my husband had been more understanding, but I'm relieved to have distanced myself from such a selfish in-law family before our child was born. The divorce process proceeded smoothly, and I became single again. Now, I enjoyed peaceful days in our newly built house with my parents. On a frigid winter night, I was jolted awake by a call from my mother-in-law. "Bring the wood for the fireplace to my room," she commanded. In this blizzard, I questioned silently, having just finished my bath. But Nancy persisted. "It's unreasonable for someone my age to venture outside in such a storm. As a daughter-in-law, you should act without needing instructions. How thoughtless of you." She continued to gripe on the phone, and while I had plenty of rebuttals, arguing seemed futile. After tucking my son into bed, I braved the snowy night and made my way to the storage shed alone. "It's freezing out here, and I can't find the wood. Is it not in here?" Just as doubt crept in, the shed was plunged into darkness. Startled, I rushed to the exit, only to find the door locked from the outside. Stuck. No way. Locked in. Did Nancy set this up? I felt a wave of despair, unable to predict what would happen next. My name is Mary, a 22-year-old housewife committed to caring for my family. I live with my husband Ken and our almost 2-year-old son Jason. I lost my father to a traffic accident when I was young, leaving my mother to support our family on her own. Working at a construction company, she single-handedly provided for my sisters Meg and me. Despite the hardships, she never complained and always wore a smile. She truly was an extraordinary person. Inspired by my mother's strength, I resolved to start working immediately after middle school, even though teachers and friends encouraged me to pursue high school for a brighter future. My determination wavered during the final summer of middle school when my mother expressed her wish for me to continue my education. When she learned that I planned to skip high school, she cried, blaming herself. Seeing her cry for the second time since my father's funeral broke my heart. I couldn't bear to add to her sorrow, so I decided to attend high school after all. Despite this, I took on a part-time job during high school to help support my mother. That's when I met Ken, 4 years older than me and a college student. He worked at the same convenience store where I had a part-time job. Among the part-timers, he was a dependable senior. Despite my hectic schedule, juggling morning newspaper deliveries and store shifts after school, Ken would kindly assist me with my tasks. His kindness and reliability won me over, and I found myself falling for him. After he graduated and was preparing to leave the job, I confessed my feelings, and we started dating. Once I graduated from high school, I began working at a supermarket. A year later, I discovered I was pregnant. When we informed our parents, Ken's family opposed our marriage, arguing we were too young. However, with my mother's heartfelt persuasion and Ken's persistent pleas, they grudgingly accepted our decision. At 20, we managed to have our wedding. Although Ken had siblings, his parents, especially attached to their eldest son, were hesitant to accept me, given that I was raised by a single mother. Their strong attachment to Ken seemed unusual to others. When our marriage was finalized, she confronted me angrily, saying, "Did you think having a child first would secure your place with my son? That's manipulative. I have no intention of accepting you into the family." her words only deepening my anxiety about married life. Our new home was built right next to my in-laws. After we got married, Ken's parents bought the vacant lot next door for us. I repeatedly suggested to Ken that we reconsider living so close to his parents, but he brushed off my concerns, saying, "They can help with our child. It's not a problem." After the wedding, it became clear that Ken was heavily reliant on his mother, a classic mama's boy. He remained indifferent even when his mother spoke harshly to me. When I was ill during my pregnancy and needed rest, Nancy criticized me, saying my son works hard, and you're just lying around all day, neglecting the housework. What do you plan to do about it? Frustrated, I confronted Ken, asking him to explain to Nancy that my doctor had advised me to rest. However, Ken sided with his mother, saying, "Are you implying my mother is wrong? She's right. You're just resting and not taking care of the housework." His response was a blow to my spirits. I had relied on him during our part-time jobs, but now I was growing increasingly concerned about our future. My anxiety only intensified. Then, on a day marked by a rare heavy snowfall, Ken was out late for a meeting. While I was settling Jason into bed, Nancy called, "What are you doing, Mary?" Even though I told her I was in the middle of putting Jason to bed, she insisted that I fetch wood from the storage shed for her room, as she had run out due to the cold. In this blizzard, I hesitated, especially since I had already bathed, but she pressed on. An old woman like me shouldn't have to brave such a snowy night. As a daughter-in-law, you should anticipate my needs without being told. How thoughtless of you. Although I had several objections, I didn't want to escalate the situation. Considering how difficult it must be to be without heat in this cold, I decided to go ahead with her request. After putting Jason to bed, I ventured to the shed situated between our house and my in-laws. Amidst the snowy landscape, I unlocked the door with trembling hands, turned on the light, and stepped inside. As I searched the area Nancy had pointed out, I found no wood. "Is there really any wood here?" I muttered to myself, reaching for my phone. Suddenly, everything went dark. "What? This has to be a joke," I exclaimed, bewildered. I rushed to the exit, only to find it locked from the outside and immovable. "No way, I'm locked in. Did Nancy set this up?" I muttered to myself, feeling a sinking sense of dread. While I have faced harassment before, I never expected her to go this far. Outside, a rare snowstorm raged, and inside the shed, the cold was bone-chilling and potentially dangerous. I was also anxious about Jason being home alone. I tried calling Ken. "Hello." His voice was slurred, clearly indicating he was intoxicated. "Help, I'm locked in the shed," I pleaded, but Ken remained unmoved, scolding me. "You must have been careless to lock yourself in. Just calm down," he said, shifting the blame onto me. His response only fueled my frustration, and I ended the call, snapping, "Fine, I won't rely on you. Whatever happens, I don't care." Realizing I had been wrong to depend on him, I resolved to find a way out on my own. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I noticed a small window at the back of the shed. I hurried over, only to find it barred and escape impossible. "I can't get out of here," I muttered in defeat, returning to the door. It was the only entrance and it wouldn't budge. Even in this desperate situation, I continued to search for a way to escape, knowing that my chances were growing slimmer. Shivering and exhausted, I pulled out my phone to call the police. As I fumbled with the screen, I heard voices outside. It must be the neighbors, I whispered to myself and called out, "Help." After shouting several times, the elderly couple next door finally responded. "Are you okay?" they shouted from outside the shed. "I'm locked in and can't get out. Please help," I cried, on the verge of tears. They quickly unlocked the door, and upon seeing my tearful state, they realized something was seriously wrong. They offered, "Why don't you come stay with us for the night?" Grateful for their kindness, I decided to take Jason and spend the night in the warmth and safety of their home. The elderly couple revealed that my in-laws had a reputation in the neighborhood for mistreating their daughters-in-law, and that my sister-in-law had also been locked in and had a heated argument with them. Knowing this, they had been worried about me. I expressed my profound gratitude to them and, exhausted from the ordeal and the snow, slept deeply through the night without stirring. In the morning, I was startled by commotion outside. I quickly dressed, left Jason with the couple, and stepped outside to find a crowd gathered in front of my house with ambulances and police cars parked nearby. "What's going on?" I wondered anxiously as I made my way back home. Ken met me with an angry tone. "Where have you been, Mary?" I explained, Last night, I got locked in the shed, and after getting help, I spent the night at the neighbor's house. However, Ken's anger didn't ease. He told me that Nancy had been found collapsed in the shed early that morning. I wondered if Nancy had come to check on me after the night had passed. As I had tried to escape from the shed, I must have disturbed its contents, causing a mess. It seemed Nancy had entered the shed in the early hours, accidentally tripping over a ball, hitting her head, and eventually collapsing. She was taken to the hospital, but tragically she passed away. Ken and my father-in-law blamed me, saying, "This is your fault," despite my protests that I had been locked in the shed. They refused to listen. Realizing that arguing was pointless, I decided to divorce Ken and leave the house with Jason. My brother-in-law Jack said, "I will choose a different path for my father and brother. If Mary leaves, I will cut ties with the family as well." My father-in-law and Ken were enraged, insisting that I shouldn't divorce or sever ties so abruptly. Despite Ken's adamant refusal to end our marriage, my decision was resolute. It's tragic that Nancy died, but I can't overlook what she did to me. I have proof that I was locked in the shed. If necessary, I'll submit the video to the police, I said, holding up my phone. Ken attempted to undermine the evidence by destroying the phone, but he never acknowledged his mother's actions. I was shocked by his inability to understand. "I should let you know," I continued, "that my sister Meg recently married a lawyer. The video from the shed can be used as evidence of emotional distress, and I plan to seek compensation. We will proceed with the divorce on that basis." Ken's demeanor shifted abruptly. "Wait, Jack is a lawyer? Compensation? You must be joking." "Not at all. What my mother did was inexcusable, and her death wasn't an accident. I'm sorry for everything, but we need to move forward with the divorce," I replied. After some negotiation, with my mother and Jack advocating on our behalf, I managed to convince Ken and my father-in-law to agree to the divorce. Just as my mother had pleaded when I married, she now argued on my behalf, and with the lawyer's support and the video evidence, Ken finally relented. He signed the divorce papers reluctantly, and the divorce was finalized. I gained custody of Jason, and we returned to my parents' home. On that snowy day when I was locked in the shed, my only focus was escaping, and I didn't have time to feel afraid. However, as time passed, the memories of that night resurfaced, causing me to panic and cry. With support from Meg and Jack, I decided to pursue damages from Ken and my father-in-law. The video of my confinement, along with testimony from the neighbors, substantiated my claim, and the lawsuit was recognized. Initially, Ken and my father-in-law were adamant about retaining custody of Jason, but when I argued, if the neighbors hadn't rescued me, who knows what might have happened. Jason could have lost his mother. I can't allow someone who would harm a child's well-being to raise him. They were left speechless. After that, they ceased discussing Jason. All subsequent negotiations were handled through Jack. After I left, news of my in-laws' reputation for mistreating their daughters-in-law spread, and Ken and my father-in-law were increasingly viewed with disdain by the neighbors. Additionally, when Ken's boss discovered the mistreatment and learned that Ken had chosen to attend a drinking party rather than rescue me during the heavy snow, he was enraged. Ken was demoted, and his professional standing deteriorated. Eventually, Ken submitted his resignation and, along with my father-in-law, had to sell their house and land and relocate. After these events, my brother-in-law and his wife also severed ties with my in-laws. Back at my family home, I asked my mother to reduce her work hours to help care for Jason. She was thrilled to spend more time with her grandson. I started working at Jack's office, and it was a refreshing change to earn a salary after being a housewife for so long. I felt a strong sense of responsibility to persevere, knowing how much my mother had supported us. Later, through Jack, I met a lawyer who is over a decade older than me. He is incredibly kind and gentle. Jason has grown quite fond of him, and we often spend our weekends together. We plan to marry next year and are currently building a new house designed to include office space for his new law firm. The house is also being built as a duplex to accommodate my mother, who raised Meg and me on her own. With deep gratitude for everything she's done, I am enjoying a fulfilling life with my family, cherishing each moment.
My dream house was finally finished, and I was so excited about the new life we were about to start. As I looked around our new home, I imagined all the wonderful things that were ahead of us. There were so many changes I wanted to make, and I was eager to begin. Just then, my in-laws showed up unexpectedly. "You're such an unreasonable daughter-in-law," they said. "We're going to live here from now on. so you need to move your parents somewhere else. I was shocked and confused. I asked my husband what was going on, but he just sighed and said, "That's how it is. I'll tell your parents." Before I could say anything else, my in-laws walked into the house. I took a deep breath and calmly said, "Do you understand whose house this is?" Let me introduce myself. My name is Donna. I'm 35 years old, and I work for a company. I've been married to James for 5 years, and we have a 4-year-old son named Adam. Adam acts very mature for his age because he's been raised around adults. Raising a child can be tough, but spending time with my son makes me happy. However, I do have one worry. My elderly parents are struggling with leg and back pain. After thinking about it a lot, I talked to my husband about the possibility of having my parents live with us. "That's a serious concern," he said. "It would be a good way to repay them for everything they've done for you. If it makes you feel better, Donna, I don't see any problem with it." "Really? That's great. Thank you, James," I replied. I was so grateful to have such a caring husband who agreed right away. So I started planning for my parents to live with us. But it wasn't easy. My parents' house is far from the city, which would make commuting to work difficult. We couldn't use a car to commute, so living there wasn't a good option. At the time, we were living in a small rental apartment that was only big enough for the 3 of us. It wasn't practical to have my parents move in with us there. After thinking it over, I came up with an idea. "James, I've been thinking, how about we build a new, bigger house? Maybe now is the time to take a bold step." James agreed right away. "That's a great idea. Let's build a comfortable house and live there together." With his approval, we started planning for the new house. First, we talked to my parents. They were hesitant at first, saying they didn't want to be a burden. But I explained that as Adam grows, our current home would eventually be too small, so it made sense to build a new house now. Once they understood, they finally agreed, and I felt relieved. After that, my husband and I were busy visiting real estate agents. We wanted a house near a hospital for my parents and close to a train station for work. We also needed a barrier-free environment because of my parents' mobility issues. My husband and I worked together to find the perfect location and design for our new home. Finally, all the preparations were done, and we placed the order with the contractors. It took a lot of effort and time, but we were proud of what we had accomplished. Now, we just had to wait for the house to be completed. Thinking about our new home made me excited and motivated me at work. During those exciting days, my in-laws heard about our plans and often contacted us. One day, my mother-in-law called and said, "I heard from James that you're building a new house. Is that true?" "Yes, that's right," I replied. "It's scheduled to be finished by the end of the year." "That's exciting. James has grown up so well, and we're so happy. We'd love to hear more about the new house. If you have time, please visit us." We had been so busy that we hadn't visited my husband's parents in a while, so we decided to go see them that weekend. When we arrived, they welcomed us warmly. Building a house is hard work, but it's also a lot of fun. Having your own home is a dream come true. "Congratulations," my father-in-law said, as happy as if it were his own achievement. I was touched and smiled. "Thank you. It was tough, but we're really excited about it. I can't wait for it to be finished, though I'm a bit worried about possible mistakes. Still, I'm thrilled about our new house." We were always excited and talked happily about it. Suddenly, my mother-in-law clapped her hands and asked, "By the way, what's the layout like?" I showed her the floor plan on my smartphone. "Oh, it's quite a big house, isn't it?" My in-laws commented, "Isn't it too many rooms for just the 2 of you?" "We're planning to live with Donna's parents, and we also wanted extra space in case we have another child in the future," my husband explained. Surprised, my in-laws asked, "You're going to live with Donna's parents?" "Yes, that's right," my husband replied. "Donna's parents have been getting weaker, so we decided to live together. That's why we're building a new house." I noticed a change in my in-laws' attitude as James explained. Later, I realized this topic might not be very appealing to them, so I tried to steer the conversation in another direction. "By the way, how have you both been feeling lately? Any changes?" "No, not really," they replied. "Everything's about the same as the last time we met." But soon enough, the conversation returned to the new house. "I want to know more about it," my mother-in-law asked. "Which room will Donna's parents use?" We're thinking about this area here, James answered, unaware of the tension. However, when we talked about living with my parents, my in-laws seemed unhappy. It felt like they weren't pleased with us prioritizing my parents. Although I felt a bit unsure, I knew that the main reason for building the house was to care for my parents. I hoped my in-laws would understand that eventually, but it was clear they weren't too happy. As time passed, the house slowly neared completion. Every time I visited the construction site, I eagerly looked forward to the day it would be done, while also paying close attention to the details. My parents visited the site several times too, and I could see how happy they were. It made me realize how rewarding it was to do something for my family. However, there was one thing that bothered me. Recently, James had been spending a lot of time with his parents, visiting them every weekend. "James, are you going to your parents' house this weekend too?" I asked. "Yes, I am," he replied. "You've been visiting more often recently," I noted. "I'm trying to be a good son like you, Donna. Now that our new house preparations have settled down, I should visit them during the holidays." "That's nice, you're very kind, James. Maybe I should come along with you," I offered. I was concerned that my in-laws might feel neglected, and I worried about their health. I thought I could help, instead of leaving everything to my husband, but he shook his head. "I'm enough by myself," he said, and went to his parents' house alone. I told him that if he needed any help, I would join him, and I believed he would call me someday. Finally, our new house was completed, and moving day arrived. We packed our things into the car and headed to our new home. The new house was even more beautiful and grand than I had imagined. I was so moved that I gasped. The new house of my dreams was finally completed, and I was thrilled about the new life we were about to start. As I looked over our new home, I imagined our future. I was excited about all the new things I wanted to do. I pictured my family having barbecues in the spacious garden, with my son and husband playing there. My parents were stuck in traffic and would take a while to arrive. "You can go ahead and wait inside," James suggested, but I wanted to enter the house together with them. I was about to say, "No, I'll wait here," when suddenly my in-laws arrived. I was surprised. Why were they visiting? They got out of the car with big smiles. "This house is really magnificent," they said. "It's something to be proud of." "That's right. We planned it together with Donna," my husband replied cheerfully. "Donna has great taste," they added, and I thanked them. Then they started unloading heavy bags from their car. Surprised, I asked, "What are these bags for? What are you doing?" My in-laws gave a shocking reply. "Of course, we're bringing these bags into the new house." "What?" I was stunned. My mother-in-law sighed and said, "What an unreasonable daughter-in-law. We're going to live here from now on, so move your parents somewhere else." I was in shock. "What are you saying?" I asked, but my mother-in-law just shook her head and crossed her arms. "A daughter-in-law should respect her husband's family. It's only natural for us to live in this new house. Now hurry up and contact your parents. We need to put our luggage down," she demanded. Struggling to understand, I looked at my husband for help, but he just sighed and said, "That's the reality. I'll tell your parents." "Wait a minute. What are you talking about? We built this house to live with my parents. Please don't be so selfish," I protested. My husband sighed again. "You still don't understand. You should just serve me. Your parents will manage somewhere else." I clenched my fists in anger. My husband had clearly been influenced by his parents. Maybe his true nature was only now becoming apparent. "Stop standing there and help with the bags," his parents ordered, confidently entering the house, even though I, the owner, hadn't stepped inside yet. Their behavior infuriated me. "This place is wonderful. The decorations are beautiful and luxurious," my in-laws said as they inspected every corner of the house with joy. My anger reached its peak. I coldly asked, "Do you understand whose house this is?" In a good mood, my in-laws turned to face me. "Whose house? It's James's house, of course. You think it's shared property between husband and wife? How audacious of you to claim this house for yourself when you're being taken care of by James." Both my father-in-law and mother-in-law criticized me harshly, not giving me a chance to speak. It became clear that they didn't know about our financial situation. It seemed James hadn't explained anything to them. It's unnatural for a house built by James to be shared with his wife. Such a presumptuous daughter-in-law is rare. I pity James for having a wife and in-laws like this. They continued to criticize me based on their misunderstanding. Finally, I reached my limit. I stared at my husband and his parents. I understand your point, but if you all really intend to live here, then James will need to reimburse me for my investment in this house. At that, my in-laws tilted their heads in confusion. How much money did you actually contribute? The amount you're talking about must be trivial. Why make such a big deal out of it? They said, laughing. I glanced at my husband, who remained silent, his mouth firmly shut. Filled with anger, I blurted out, "Why are you silent? It's unbelievable that you would hide something so important." Pressed, my husband fidgeted and avoided my gaze. At that moment, my mother-in-law demanded, "What are you trying to say?" My husband looked pale with fear, and I realized I couldn't expect an explanation from him. I decided to clarify myself. In fact, the funds for purchasing this house were all paid from my savings. Therefore, this house is technically mine. As I revealed this, I saw my husband's pale face. It was as if he had held his breath. I continued, "If you want to live here, you need to repay the $330,000 used to build this house immediately." My declaration shocked my in-laws, leaving them speechless. They turned to my husband, pressing him in a panic. "James, is that true? Is Donna really the owner of this house?" Faced with their questions, my husband had no choice but to admit the truth. "Actually, Donna purchased this house. She is very capable and already holds a managerial position. Her salary is significantly higher than mine." "But James, you've been working at your current job for a long time, right? You graduated from a prestigious university. You should be earning a high salary," my in-laws insisted. My husband, having a high sense of pride, must have been spinning the story to suit himself. However, even he couldn't hide his disturbance under the relentless questioning from his parents. "Actually, I recently made a big mistake. I almost got fired, and my salary dropped to the level of a new graduate," he finally confessed. Shocked by this revelation, his parents were left speechless. My mother-in-law murmured softly, "I can't believe James would end up like this." My in-laws quickly ran over to me, their previous rude behavior seeming like a lie, and apologized profusely. "Donna, we are truly sorry for what we said earlier," they pleaded. "Please forgive us. Could you possibly allow us to stay here?" "What?" I looked at them sternly as they both pleaded at once. Seeing this, my husband also became desperate and pleaded, "Please, it was wrong of me not to explain. Can you forgive us and allow us to live here?" Responding with a calm voice, I said, "No matter what you say now, I cannot forgive you. This house was purchased to live with my parents. If that cannot be fulfilled, there was no point in buying it. If you insist on staying here, you must immediately pay $330,000. "How can we possibly come up with such a huge sum?" my in-laws responded. "Then you must leave," I stated firmly. When I refused, my in-laws began to cry and clung to me. "Please don't say such things. We've sold our home and have nowhere else to go. Donna, please forgive us. Please allow us to live here with your parents too." Unbelievable, I thought. A household where a couple lives with both sets of parents is unheard of. No matter the reason, it's impossible. If you sold your house, you should use the proceeds to find another place to live. As I declared this, they began to cry simultaneously. My father-in-law pleaded with a trembling voice, "To tell the truth, I've recently made huge debts through investments and gambling. We've used up the proceeds from the sold house and the retirement money, and now we have absolutely nothing left. We're retired, can't find work, and my wife has never worked outside the home. You're all we have left, Donna." Their expectations were clear, but this situation stemmed entirely from my father-in-law's actions and had nothing to do with me. "You should rely on your proud son. I have no obligation to support you financially, so unfortunately, I cannot help. However, we are legally a family, remember that. Regrettably, it is impossible to continue living with disrespectful parents and a husband who neither prevents illegal occupation of my property nor stops demanding it. Therefore, I have decided to divorce James." At my firm declaration, my husband weakly pleaded, "Wait a minute, divorce isn't something you can just decide like that. Please don't say such things, Donna. I'm sorry, but I've reached my limit. Please leave this house immediately." Faced with the possibility of divorce, my husband was clearly shaken and along with his parents repeatedly pleaded, but my decision was firm. I cannot tolerate them staying in our house without permission for an extended period. If you continue to stay, I will call the police. My firm declaration made my in-laws choose to leave the house hastily. Nevertheless, my husband argued, legally, I am still your husband and have a right to reside here, but I could not accept his claim. If you continue to stay here, I am prepared to take legal action and have you removed. Are you really okay with that? During this conversation, our son, who had been napping, woke up and entered the room. Then he unexpectedly said, "If it goes to court, Dad will be in a really tough situation." Hearing our son's innocent remark, my husband must have felt even more anxiety and desperation. Already at risk of being fired due to mistakes at work, the potential of getting involved in a legal battle greatly increased his chances of dismissal. Quickly grasping this harsh reality, my husband, with a pained expression, hurriedly gathered his belongings and quietly left the house. Just after that, my parents arrived for a visit. Noticing that my husband was nowhere to be seen, they were initially shocked. As I explained everything that had happened, they gradually showed warm smiles and expressed their gratitude. "You've stood up so strongly for yourself. Thank you. We're proud of you. You are a wonderful daughter," they said. Hearing their words, I felt a release from the anxiety I had been carrying for a long time and finally regained peace of mind. I had hoped that my husband would understand and accept the situation, but that was a wish unfulfilled. Perhaps escaping from a family that belittled me before things escalated further was actually a stroke of good fortune. The in-laws who had insulted me called repeatedly a week after I drove them out, but I decided not to respond to any of their attempts. According to some information, after losing their home, my in-laws are barely surviving in a poor-quality apartment. Eventually, my relationship with my husband officially ended, and the divorce was finalized. Due to his workplace failures, he was transferred to a different region and is now living a challenging new life. Meanwhile, every time I see my parents enjoying the sunshine in the spacious garden of our new home, I feel truly happy. Although things didn't turn out as planned, we are leading a peaceful and joyful life in this beautiful house. As a single mother starting a new life, I am convinced that raising my child in this stress-free environment is far better than the co-parenting I previously endured with my ex-husband. I am committed to doing everything I can until the day my son grows into a fine adult.
My name is Nancy, and I'm 32 years old. I work in an administrative role at a small to medium-sized company while also managing my responsibilities at home. My husband, Damon, and I met through mutual friends, and we've been married for 3 years now. The initial excitement and thrill of our marriage have faded, but we've been spending our time together peacefully without major issues, at least when it's just the two of us. Nancy, did you make this miso soup with broth? It has no flavor at all. Did you properly use kelp and bonito flakes? Damon asked one evening. I'm sorry, but the cleaning of the entrance and bathroom wasn't perfect either. What kind of upbringing did you have? Do you understand what I'm saying? Yes, I understand, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. During the holidays in May, I was expected to accompany Damon to his parents' home, where my mother-in-law, Kathy, assigned me household chores. Every holiday, I'm taken to Damon's parents' house and made to do tasks, constantly criticized and nitpicked over every little mistake. My father-in-law, Mike, and Damon are usually engrossed in newspapers or their smartphones, completely ignoring Kathy's behavior. I'm sorry, Damon said on our way home, trying to comfort me. My mother has always been talkative, but she seems very lively when you visit, so I think she might actually be happy. It felt off the mark. Kathy was probably lively because she could freely complain about me. Seeing my friends around me also troubled by similar mother-in-law issues, I convinced myself that this was normal. I believed that if I endured it, the problem would be resolved one day. When my husband's elder brother Jack got married, it introduced a new dynamic. Jack has a reserved personality, contrasting sharply with Damon, and our interactions had always been limited to mere greetings. Jack's bride, Meg, was a young and beautiful woman, significantly younger than him. It was a bit surprising to think of them as a married couple, but Kathy was elated, saying, "That's our Jack, managing to get such a young bride." This new year would be the first with Jack and Meg present. They had been busy with work until the end of the year and planned to visit right after the new year. As such, I had been staying at my in-laws' house since New Year's Eve, and Kathy assigned me even more chores than usual. Nancy, are you still cleaning? If you keep going at this pace, the year will end. Please prepare the soba noodles quickly. Understood, I replied. Oh, I'm looking forward to tomorrow. Since the bride is young, I'll have to educate her properly, Kathy said, clearly excited. I let out a small sigh. From my position as a fellow daughter-in-law, I felt more sympathy than gratitude. Tomorrow, I decided I would actively support Meg. With that determination, I wrung out the cloth in the cold bucket of water. The next day around noon, Jack and Meg arrived. Meg, although glamorous in appearance, acted politely, and I found her likable. However, it seemed like Kathy was working hard to find any tiny flaw in her. I thought she was desperate because the first impression of Meg was crucial. Nancy, prepare the tea quickly and set up the New Year's dishes as well. Understood. Nancy, please help out too, Meg said, her eyes widening in surprise as she headed toward the living room. It's always been customary for daughters-in-law to be in the kitchen, hasn't it, Mother? Jack interjected. Just sit down, Meg, and leave your luggage at the entrance. Kathy, with her piercing gaze, pulled Meg into the kitchen after telling me, make sure to educate her properly before returning to the living room. With a grin, I approached the bewildered Meg. It's tough on your first visit, isn't it? In this house, the daughter-in-law prepares everything for the guests. The teapot is over there, and the teacups are around here. As I showed her around the kitchen, Meg stared at me in astonishment. Nancy, how do you know where everything is in someone else's kitchen? She asked. I handle most of the housework when I'm here, I replied. I see. So in this house, the daughter-in-law doesn't get to eat until everyone else is finished, and until then, she focuses on preparing the dishes. That's right. Meg's eyes widened, and she suddenly raised her voice so loudly it made my ears ring. What? Kathy quickly rushed in from the living room. What happened? Meg, still shocked, turned to her. Kathy, I'm appalled. Is this how you welcome me, with instant bullying? Huh? Kathy was taken aback as Meg approached her, forcing her to step back slightly. This is definitely bullying. Making the daughter-in-law do all the work and not even letting her eat. It's like I'm watching an old drama. I can't believe mothers-in-law like this still exists. I feel like I need to protect myself. What are you talking about? Kathy stammered. Kathy, is bullying your daughter-in-law a tradition in this house? Do you feel an urge to torment the woman who stole your son? That's not bullying, it's a lesson, Kathy said, her lips quivering. Making the daughter-in-law do all the housework and not even letting her eat. Is that what you call a lesson? Meg retorted. Nancy, what do you think? Caught off guard by this sudden question, I hesitated. Meg, with a detective-like enthusiasm, tapped her forehead and circled the kitchen. If it's a lesson, is it recommended by the Board of Education? Are schools teaching that daughters-in-law should eat last? I've never heard of that. Well, I guess, I mumbled, overwhelmed by her persistence. Meg gave a bright smile and looked back at Kathy. When Kathy arrived, I wondered if she saw herself as a charming lady meant to pass down the tradition of tormenting daughters-in-law to the next generation. It was clear that Kathy was already panicking. Is this really the custom around here? Maybe we should ask the neighbors, Kathy suggested. How about we go next door and find out? That's enough, Meg interrupted firmly. Once the New Year's feast is ready, both of you should sit down promptly. Surprised by Meg's sudden assertiveness, Kathy was momentarily taken aback. Victory, Meg. Let's finish up quickly and have lunch together, she said, dropping her inquisitive demeanor. Meg smiled warmly, but Kathy eyed her sternly, clearly not pleased with how easily Meg had taken control of the situation. It was surprising to see Meg's unique logic so effectively overpower Kathy's usual dominance. The dynamic I had always taken for granted was starting to crumble before my eyes. Meg seemed so confident that I genuinely believed she might go and ask the neighbors about the custom. But this was just the beginning of a clash between Meg and Kathy. I knew Kathy, despite being initially overwhelmed, wouldn't give up easily. When we finally sat down at the table, Damon and Mike looked astonished, as always, saying nothing. Jack seated Meg beside him, visibly relieved. Kathy, having recovered from the earlier incident, was now keenly observing Meg, waiting for her to slip up. Despite the tension, Meg remained calm. This is delicious. Did you make all of this, Nancy? She asked. Yes, I did, I replied. I absolutely love your stew and steak, Meg complimented with genuine enthusiasm. I would crave these dishes all year round, Meg said, her youthful charm warming my heart and making me smile, something rare in my in-laws' house. As we ate, Meg reached for the soy sauce, only to find the bottle empty. It seems we're out of soy sauce. I'll go get it, she said. Thank you, Jack, she added with a smile as he got up to fetch it. Kathy, unable to resist, made a pointed comment. Making your husband do such tasks reveals a lot about your upbringing. Meg, surprised by Kathy's remark, quickly responded in a way that caught her off guard. A phrase like that reveals a lot about your upbringing too, she replied. Kathy gasped at Meg's retort. I've never heard of such a phrase before. It's surprising that people still use expressions like that in the 21st century. What do you think, Jack? Meg turned to him, mimicking a news anchor. Jack chuckled and said, It feels like something from history. Maybe it should be reported for its academic value. Kathy's eyes widened in disbelief. Setting the joke aside, Jack then said seriously, This is my home. It's natural for me to help out. Making Meg do everything is such an outdated way of thinking. Outdated, the word left Kathy speechless once again. The atmosphere felt different from when it was just Kathy and me. Damon and Mike stood there awkwardly, unsure of what to do, while Jack and Meg happily enjoyed the New Year's dishes and sashimi. Watching them, a different emotion began to well up inside me. After lunch, as I was relaxing in the Japanese-style guest room following the cleanup, Kathy slid open the door with a scowl on her face. Nancy, what about babies? She asked. This was a topic she always brought up. It seemed she targeted me at this moment to avoid confronting Meg. Somehow, the situation felt almost comical, and the usual discomfort I felt began to fade. I felt a slight relief, though not completely at ease. Have you consulted a doctor? Kathy pressed. Yes, I have, I replied. The doctor said there's no problem on my end. Then what's the issue? You're not suggesting the problem lies with my son, are you? Normally, I would have ended the conversation there, but today was different. I've been thinking that Damon should also get tested, I said, straightforwardly voicing what I had kept to myself for so long. Kathy, used to my usual compliance, was stunned, momentarily frozen as her face paled. How foolish can you be, Nancy? Testing my son? There's no way he could have a problem. Understand this, if a child isn't conceived, it's the wife's fault. So if there's no issue with you, conception should be easy. How dare you blame your husband for your own inadequacies? How shameless. Excuse me. If you're childless for 3 years, you should leave. What's the point of having a barren woman as a wife? Kathy spat out the words, her voice dripping with disdain. Just then, Meg appeared behind Kathy, who let out a startled, croaky shriek of surprise. I was startled too, but I was glad Meg was there. Her presence was a welcome relief, a reminder that I didn't have to conform to the strange norms of my in-laws. She had always told me that there was no need to follow bizarre rules, especially when they weren't normal. It was okay to point out the oddities, to stand up for myself. Today, I wanted to match her strength. More than anything, I wanted freedom from this oppressive house. I've never heard the term stone woman before, Nancy. Did you know this difficult term? Meg asked, jestingly pointing an imaginary microphone at me. No, I replied, catching on to her playful tone. I first heard it from Kathy and looked it up on my smartphone. It means a woman made of stone, implying she can't get pregnant, like she's cold and lifeless. Meg nodded, then with a mischievous smile, added, Kathy is a living relic, a cultural heritage, isn't she? My heart raced, but I matched her pace and smiled. Sensing the change in my behavior, Meg beamed with approval. Mother, you're such a stereotypical mother-in-law, like a pro at tormenting your daughter-in-law. That's enough. Kathy finally lost it, bombarded with criticism and frustrated that she couldn't criticize me as she pleased. Hearing her outburst, Damon and Jack rushed in. Jack, what's with this woman with no common sense? Kathy demanded, her voice trembling with anger. Ignoring Kathy's enraged shout, Jack stood unwaveringly beside Meg. Aren't you the one lacking common sense, Mother? It's despicable to look down on someone else's daughter. I've endured my own hardships, haven't I? Isn't it my turn to make others suffer? Didn't Grandma pass away when I was just a child? How many years did you truly suffer? Your character and outdated values are your own doing, not Grandma's. Jack, is this woman the reason you're talking like this? This woman brings misfortune. Leave Jack and get out immediately, she demanded. It's not her, Mother. I've always disliked how emotional and self-centered you are. I could see my future wife suffering because of you, which is why I hesitated to marry. But Meg assured me it would be okay. If I'm to part with anyone, it would be you, not Meg. Jack replied, his usual calm demeanor replaced by a fierce defense of his wife. Tears welled up in my eyes at the sight of Jack's defiance. Kathy seemed taken aback by her son's boldness. "Then I will leave and never return to this tormenting house," she said. "Why should Jack also leave? You should stay here. You're my child," Kathy protested. "Not anymore. Goodbye, Mother," Jack replied, picking up the luggage left by the entrance. Jack and Meg headed for the exit, but before leaving, Meg turned back and extended her hand to me. "Nancy, would you like to come with us?" she asked, her warm smile drawing me in. "Thank you, I will," I responded, feeling a sense of relief. Nancy, my silent husband, finally spoke up, but it didn't matter. I took only the essentials and left with Jack and Meg. They drove me away, leaving my in-laws' house behind. "I'm sorry, Nancy, for speaking out of turn earlier. You must have thought it was strange," Meg said, sitting next to me in the back seat. "It's okay. Thanks to you and Jack, I feel relieved," I replied, grateful for their support. I replied with a smile, feeling a sense of calm wash over me. Meg's face, now free from the tension of earlier, looked serene. This must have been her true self. She had likely been trying to support me throughout the day. "I'm sorry we couldn't intervene sooner," Meg said softly. "I've always been concerned, but I wasn't sure if it was my place to interfere with Damon's marriage." Jack glanced at me through the rearview mirror, his expression a mix of apology and frustration. "It's not your fault," I reassured him quickly. "My brother, father, and I have long been troubled by my mother's personality. It's strange, but we've learned to ignore it. Maybe Damon felt a bit relieved when the focus shifted to you, but it's inexcusable that he didn't protect his own wife." Meg continued, "As we discussed earlier, Jack wasn't keen on getting married, but I was determined to marry him. I deliberately chose to get on Kathy's bad side, though I would have preferred not to if she had treated me well. It was clear that Jack and Meg shared a deep respect and care for each other. Their relationship exemplified true marital harmony, clearing the doubts that had lingered in my mind. Thanks to both of you. I feel like I've come to understand who the real adversary is," I said. Jack smiled, a mix of relief and sadness in his eyes. "If it helps, I'll give you the audio recordings later, everything from today, and all the instances of harassment we've recorded over the years. We kept them, hoping we'd never need to use them." Meg added, "We won't be visiting that toxic home again, but if you ever need anything, please reach out. We will always support you." Their presence strengthened my resolve. After they dropped me off, I decided to tidy up the room while waiting for Damon to return. He came home the following day around noon, and when he saw me, a look of relief crossed his face. "I'm back," he said, looking weary. "Last night was tough. Mom was really angry." "I see," I replied calmly. "But don't worry, I covered for you. I told her that Meg was just too hyper and you were surprised, so you left early. Please apologize to them the next time you see them." He continued, oblivious to the shift in my mood. "That woman, Meg, right? Jack sure picked a strange one. Does she not have any common sense? I'm really glad I chose you. A wife's worth isn't just about age, you know. Haha." I cut him off with a cold tone. I realize now that choosing you was a huge mistake. He looked at me in shock, clearly not understanding the gravity of my words. As he stared into my angry eyes, the weight of the situation seemed to dawn on him. "I thought I might forgive you if you changed after seeing Jack and Meg," I said, "but you're no different from your mother. I'm so disappointed." "What do you mean? Haven't we been doing fine?" he asked, bewildered. "That's because I've been enduring it all alone," I said. "You've used me as a shield. No, as a sacrifice to escape from your mother. Just like your father, who acts like he's invisible, you did the same thing. Sacrifice." "I didn't mean it like that," he stammered, sweat forming on his forehead in the cold room where the heater seemed ineffective. He looked completely frazzled and pitiable. "I mistakenly believed you were on my side because you always covered for me," I said. "But after seeing Jack, I realized that if you truly cared for me, you wouldn't have taken me to such a distressing place. And even if you did, shouldn't a husband protect his wife?" He started to protest. I felt Kathy's harassment was severe, but now I see clearly. My real enemy was you all along. I came to this realization thanks to Jack and Meg. "But Nancy," he pleaded, "it's over. Even Kathy said there's no point in me being there. Let's do as she says. I've downloaded a divorce form from the website. Here." I picked up my packed luggage and headed for the door. "While you were gone for the night, I already sent the larger luggage via delivery service." "Wait, Nancy, goodbye," he called out, but I paid no heed to his pitiful cries as I left. I confidently walked out of the house I had called home for so long. With the New Year holidays behind me, I immediately sought the assistance of a divorce lawyer. Determined never to return to that place, I entrusted all the legal matters to a seasoned attorney. Kathy and Damon were clearly taken aback by the lawyer I had engaged. Thanks to the recorded evidence provided by Jack, the divorce proceedings unfolded smoothly. Kathy, still bitter, said, "I'll find a better, more fertile wife for you." My lawyer reassured me, saying, "She probably views a wife merely as a tool for the husband's family." 5 years later, as I watched Jessica play, I marveled at how far I had come. "Jessica, it's mealtime. Use your spoon properly and remember to blow on it," I instructed gently. Katie, Meg's kind and gentle 3-year-old daughter, was playing nearby, demonstrating her affection for Jessica. Despite having no blood relation, Katie and Jessica were as close as family. 3 years after the divorce, I had remarried and soon welcomed our daughter Jessica, proving I was not infertile. My new husband and his parents are warm-hearted and considerate, not only cherishing Jessica but also deeply caring for me as their daughter-in-law. Meg, true to her promise, supported me immensely during the divorce. Our bond, which began during the divorce, evolved into a deep friendship akin to that of sisters. Damon, on the other hand, has remarried once but faced another divorce soon after. Rumors of this troubled past have cast his home in a negative light, earning it the nickname Damon's House. Women are wary of the place, and despite occasional attempts by Damon and Kathy to reconcile or seek cohabitation, I have no intention of returning. Their refusal to acknowledge their mistakes may lead them to a future of loneliness. "Once Jessica can walk, let's go to that park," Meg suggested. "It has soft grass and is really relaxing." "That sounds wonderful," I replied. Meg and I exchanged smiles, and I felt a deep sense of gratitude. Despite the hardships with Damon, my life now is peaceful, and I am thankful that I took Meg's hand and embarked on a new future. My name is Amy, and I'm 31 years old. I've been married to my husband, Sean, for 3 years, but we still don't have any children. We had envisioned owning a home and starting a family by now, but that dream seems to be slipping away. I've started to believe that Sean and his parents are contributing to our current situation. Despite our efforts to save money together, our savings haven't grown much. Sean often buys expensive branded gifts for his parents, and this habit has been a strain on our finances. Before we married, I knew Sean had a tradition of giving gifts to his parents, which I initially saw as a sign of respect. However, my perspective has shifted since we've been married. While his filial piety is admirable, his tendency to spend money recklessly has become more apparent. He seems to view our increased income as a green light for more extravagant spending. Where he used to stick to a budget, he now chooses only luxury items, and his parents have come to expect these costly gifts. They even request them for no particular reason, which I find difficult to understand. Sean has been secretly giving gifts to his parents, and discovering this has only fueled my growing resentment. While he shows unwavering dedication to his parents, he remains indifferent to mine. When I bring up my mother's upcoming birthday, his nonchalant response only adds to my frustration. The stark contrast between the gifts he lavishes on his parents and the modest ones I can afford for mine bothers me deeply. I sometimes wish I could give my parents expensive gifts, but our finances are stretched thin due to his spending. As a result, the gifts I manage to give them are always a compromise, falling short of what I'd like to offer. Although my parents appreciate what they receive, it pains me that I can't fully celebrate their special occasions. My dissatisfaction with Sean's one-sided concern for his parents is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. After a year of marriage, as I watched our savings stagnate, I began addressing Sean's spending habits. However, each time we discussed it, the conversation ended in his anger. He would accuse me of lacking sympathy for his parents or even of disliking them without truly hearing my concerns. Despite my repeated attempts to communicate, he never genuinely listened or showed any willingness to change. A few months ago, Sean bought his mother an expensive new wallet. When I confronted him about it, he defended the purchase by claiming her old wallet was worn out. But I knew the old wallet was one he had given her just a year earlier, and it didn't look worn to me. Realizing that my words weren't getting through to him, I decided to approach his parents directly. Considering our future, I felt it was crucial to address the issue directly with Sean's parents. With Scene present, I began by showing them the balance of our joint account. I pointed out how little our savings had grown since we got married, despite both of us working. As you can see, I said, we've hardly increased our savings since we began, even though we both contribute to the household income. My in-laws examined the bank statement with unreadable expressions while Scene appeared visibly displeased. Undeterred, I turned to him and asked Scene, do you remember the promise we made when we got married? We agreed to save money to build the house and start a family, right? He seemed to have a moment of realization and nodded, looking guilty. To get to the bottom of the issue, I pressed Scene further. Then why aren't you cooperating? Are you saying you don't want to build a house or have children? He shook his head vigorously, clearly disagreeing with that notion. Just as I was about to continue, my mother-in-law interrupted. Oh, so we're talking about building a house now. That sounds wonderful. I'd like our room to be in a sunny spot. My father-in-law quickly added, yes, we definitely need more space for our things. 2 rooms would be ideal. I was taken aback by this unexpected response. Seizing the moment, Scene became enthusiastic about the idea. All right, then let's make it 2 rooms, one for visits and another for storing clothes and belongings. Annoyed by their enthusiasm, I cut in, if we're adding 2 more rooms, that will increase our costs significantly. Therefore, we'll need to avoid any expensive gifts until the loan is paid off. My mother-in-law quickly backpedaled. Oh, it was just a joke. We rarely stay over at Scene's place anyway, right? My father-in-law chimed in, exactly. Maintaining the smile, I firmly reiterated a decision I had made previously. I see it was a joke. However, for the sake of our future household and children, we'll need to limit gifts to birthdays and anniversaries only. Scene immediately protested, that's not fair to Mom and Dad. I had anticipated his reaction and responded with a look of disdain. Then your pocket money will be entirely cut off. We can't find any other way to tighten our budget. Or are you planning to use the money you saved when you were single to cover your parents' gifts? If that's the case, I won't interfere. Scene fell silent, his face sour. I let out a soft sigh, and with a bright smile directed at my in-laws who were searching for a response, said, I appreciate your understanding, as saving requires the effort of the entire family. They responded with reluctant nods, their faces still grim. It was clear that none of them, including Scene, were fully convinced, but I firmly closed the conversation, leaving no room for further discussion. After that discussion, Scene stopped giving extravagant gifts to his parents, and I noticed our joint bank account balance steadily increasing. I felt a sense of relief as our finances began to improve. However, this tranquility was short-lived. The turning point came when my sister gave birth. Being only a year younger, my sister and I have always been very close. Although our contact lessened after marriage, we still made an effort to keep in touch at least once a week. When she had the baby, she sent me a photo along with news of her joy and excitement. Perhaps I'm biased because it's my niece, but the baby was truly adorable. I couldn't contain my excitement and immediately showed Scene the photo of the baby. His eyes softened as he was charmed by the baby's cuteness. I felt a wave of relief at his reaction. Although he had always said he liked children, I had my doubts about whether he truly meant it. I worried that his reluctance to save money was due to a lack of interest in having children. But from his reaction, it seemed he would cherish our future children as well. Feeling reassured, I remembered something and said to Scene, who was still admiring the photo, I've already sent my sister a gift and some money for the baby. His expression immediately darkened and he glared at me with clear dissatisfaction. You restrict gifts to my parents but spend so much on your sister, he said, clearly upset. As I stood there in shock, he continued to complain, and you sent it without discussing it with me. His self-righteousness made me lose my temper, and I responded sharply, how can you say that when you always secretly give gifts to your parents? This is for a baby's celebration, not for no reason at all. If you can't accept that, then let's agree to stop giving gifts entirely. I worried that I had overstepped, but the words were out, and I couldn't backtrack. Perhaps the idea of being forbidden from giving gifts was too much for him to accept, but he didn't argue further and fell silent. His face remained displeased, but I took it as a sign that he had reluctantly agreed. A few days after our argument, I received a call from my mother-in-law. As soon as I answered, she started with, I heard your sister had a baby. Realizing my husband had shared this news, I confirmed, yes, that's right. I expected her to offer congratulations or chat about the baby, But instead, she asked, "So, I heard you gave her a present. Is that true?" Taken aback by her directness, I replied, "Yes, I sent something for the baby." To my surprise, she responded cheerfully, "Well, I hope you'll have something for our anniversary next week too. I'm looking forward to it." Her request felt a bit impolite, but it was better than having Scene make an expensive purchase on his own. I agreed and ended the call. For my in-laws' anniversary, I decided to send a practical pair of glasses. I braced myself for a complaint, but none came, and time went by without incident. I had been too quick to judge my in-laws, but recent events made me realize my mistake. One day, my mother-in-law visited our home with a brand new luxury bag, beaming with delight. She admired the bag and thanked me, saying, "Thank you for the $4,000 bag." I was stunned, believing that our anniversary gift was merely a pair of glasses. I complained to Scene, "I feel awful about this." My shock left me barely able to whisper, but I chose not to address it with her at the time. She seemed oblivious to my reaction and cheerfully mentioned she was heading out to lunch with friends. After she left, I rushed to the bank. We had 3 accounts, individual accounts from before our marriage and a joint account we opened after tying the knot. The joint account showed no significant withdrawals, but checking our personal accounts revealed that $800 had been withdrawn from Scene's account and $4,000 from mine. When my husband came home, I confronted him about the missing money, but he dismissed my concerns. I thought it would be unfilial to give just glasses for the anniversary, so I used my account to cover Dad and yours to cover Mom, he explained. Seeing my anger, he grew flustered and insisted it wasn't a big deal since he hadn't touched the joint account. As I remained silent, his frustration mounted. "Why would you only get glasses for the anniversary? I went out of my way to make sure both of them were covered," he argued. Realizing the conversation was going nowhere, I grabbed the carry bag I had packed earlier and quickly left the house. I could hear him shouting behind me, but I ignored it and walked away. When I arrived at my parents' house, they greeted me at the door, clearly surprised by my sudden return. My intention to divorce left them even more shocked, as I hadn't mentioned anything about it before. It must have come as a surprise. I explained the deep differences in values and thinking between my husband, his parents, and myself, detailing the recent incident with the luxury bag. I shared how my fear of my assets being misused led me to decide on divorce. My parents listened, understood, and supported my decision. Since I had already prepared for the divorce, filing the petition and arranging for a lawyer was straightforward. Once I confirmed that the affidavit had likely reached him, my husband began trying to contact me repeatedly. His voicemails filled up with messages, which I initially listened to. However, as his messages grew increasingly angry, I stopped listening and chose not to respond. The divorce proceedings with my husband went much smoother than I had anticipated, thanks to my thorough preparations. Since we worked in different departments of the same company, news of our divorce spread quickly. Although he attempted to claim that I left of my own accord, his lies were quickly disproven. I had already informed my boss and colleagues about my intention to divorce, along with the reasons and the issues with my husband and his family. Despite any false information he might have spread, my boss and colleagues, who knew the real story, promptly refuted it. My husband only made things worse for himself by propagating falsehoods. He faced cold stares from colleagues and was pressured by his boss to resolve the matter quickly. Given his naturally timid nature, it seemed he couldn't handle the pressure. Under increasing pressure, he agreed to the divorce. Unable to handle the hostile environment at work, he resigned and moved back in with his parents. However, things didn't improve there. Rumors about him and his parents had spread beyond the office, reaching our relatives as well, thanks to a family member who worked at the company. The reception was icy. Returning to his parents' home only further damaged his reputation. The neighborhood viewed him as someone who had been abandoned by his wife, and his parents, known for flaunting their luxury and looking down on others, only worsened the situation. Although the exact source of the leaks was unclear, the rumors circulated quickly. Facing disapproval and cold stares from those around them, my ex-husband and his parents lost their former arrogance and became notably subdued. Their once beloved collection of luxury goods came to an end when my ex-husband lost his income, forcing them to sell off their possessions. A relative who used to work with us informed me that the relationship between my ex-husband and his parents had become frosty, filled with mutual blame. I felt indifferent to this news. They had become irrelevant to me after our separation. I've been living stress-free and enjoying each day. The steady increase in my bank account, now that I'm no longer burdened with saving, brings me great joy. My enthusiasm for work has returned. Previously, my earnings were drained by gifts for my in-laws, which was disheartening, but that's no longer an issue. I've also been able to give my parents the gifts I truly wanted to, something I couldn't afford before. They initially said that what they had received was enough, but once I explained it was for my personal satisfaction, they happily accepted. Seeing their reaction lifted the guilt I had felt. As for love, I plan to take a break, but if the opportunity for remarriage arises, I hope to apply the lessons I've learned from these experiences. Living with my mother-in-law has been nothing short of a nightmare. She's constantly belittling me, dismissing me as a failure just because I'm a high school dropout. You can't do anything but cook, she often scoffs. Why do you make such a mess of the room? Her harsh criticisms are relentless, and she doesn't hesitate to barge into our bedroom, rifling through closets and drawers, hurling insults my way. It's as if my lack of formal education is all the excuse she needs to demean me. Despite her constant jabs, I can't argue back. My life has been overshadowed by her disdain since the day I married her son. My name is Sophia, and my parents run a modest but well-loved restaurant. My father, a dedicated chef, and my mother, who handles the front of the house with charm and efficiency, have created a warm, bustling eatery. Although our restaurant is a bit dated and located far from the city center, it's known for its excellent food and service. Growing up as an only child, I admired my parents and dreamed of taking over the family business. I began working at the restaurant from a young age, and after graduating middle school, I dedicated myself to helping more, especially as my father's health began to decline. My father taught me the basics of cooking, and while I struggled to match his exact flavors, I used his recipes as a guide and gradually began earning compliments from our regulars. They would say, "Sophia's cooking is delicious, it tastes just like your dad's." Encouraged by these words, I took on more responsibility at the restaurant, eager to ease my father's burden. However, my school attendance became a concern for my teachers, leading to a meeting with my parents where my lack of attendance was discussed. Despite their insistence on focusing on my studies, I made the decision to quit school. My parents were heartbroken, but their support never wavered. I completed the dropout process and began working full-time at the restaurant. As the years passed, I found myself managing most of the restaurant's operations alone, from opening preparations to closing cleanup. My father's frequent hospitalizations and my mother's time spent with him at the hospital left me to shoulder the responsibility. One day, while handling the cut on my finger in the restaurant, a man entered, noticing my distress. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I cut my finger while prepping," I replied. He handed me a Band-Aid and said, "Here, take this." "Thanks. That really helped," I responded. His name is Ted, my boyfriend, who is 2 years younger than me. We met through his job as a kitchen equipment salesman, and our relationship blossomed despite my initial doubts about why someone like him would be interested in me. Over time, those worries faded, and we are now preparing to celebrate our 3rd anniversary. Ted proposed that we get married on our anniversary, and I joyfully accepted. Although I was anxious about leaving the restaurant, my parents reassured me, saying they wanted me to be happy. As our 3rd anniversary approached, Ted and his mother visited our restaurant for the first time, marking the first meeting between our families. Ted's father had passed away early, so it was just his mother who joined us. When I informed my parents about the meeting, Ted's mother smiled warmly and said, "I'm so glad we finally met. My son talks about you all the time." "Actually, it's our daughter who has been singing your praises," my parents replied, smiling back. "We're truly grateful to Ted," my mother added. "Our daughter's only skill is cooking, but we hope you'll take good care of her." Ted suggested, "Let's put the formalities aside and enjoy the dinner." I began serving the dishes I had prepared in advance. "Oh, how wonderful," they exclaimed. "Ted is lucky to have a wife who cooks so well." "Everything is delicious." Ted and his mother engaged in lively conversation with my parents, who were clearly pleased. Seeing everyone enjoy the meal I had prepared filled me with immense happiness. The first meeting between our families ended on a positive note, and Ted and I got married soon after. We didn't have a wedding ceremony due to Ted's busy schedule, but once we moved out of the restaurant and into our rented house, I finally felt like a true married couple. A few months into our marriage, Ted brought up a surprising suggestion. "I'm concerned about my mother living alone," he said. I was taken aback. "We have a spacious house here," I replied. Ted explained, I was thinking of inviting my mother to live with us starting next week. Considering her age, it would be safer for her to be with us in case of emergencies. Although I hadn't anticipated this proposal and it caught me off guard, I couldn't find a reason to object. Ultimately, I agreed. When we were house hunting, Ted was adamant about choosing a detached house. I had preferred a flat or condo, but I was persuaded by his argument that a larger space would be better. I wondered if Ted had always intended for us to live with his mother, which made me feel uneasy, but I pushed those thoughts aside. Our newlywed life felt fleeting, and soon, living with my mother-in-law became our reality. Ted, busy with work, was often away during the week and mostly went out on weekends. Despite his initial concern for his mother, I felt the impact of this new living arrangement settling in. I never saw Ted do anything to help his mother, and there was another issue. My mother-in-law had changed completely since we first met. While she initially enjoyed my cooking, she now refused to touch it. "Eating food this flavorful will make me sick," she would say. "You're not feeding my son this, are you? What were you thinking?" I apologized, asking if the seasoning was too strong. "Of course it was," she retorted. "Your family's cooking might have been like this, but mine is much more refined and lightly seasoned. It's a pity my son has to eat this every day." Ted still claimed to enjoy my cooking, but his mother was persistently dissatisfied. Determined to please her, I started learning how to prepare healthier meals suitable for the elderly, using books and online resources. However, she criticized the new dishes as tasteless, poorly presented, and not nutritious enough. "Whatever you cook seems unhealthy," she would say. It wasn't just the cooking. My mother-in-law would frequently use excuses like "my back hurts" or "my legs hurt" to avoid helping with household chores. To avoid conflict, I took on the chores myself, only to be met with sarcastic comments such as, "You call this clean? It looks like a trash bin to me." And "well, you did drop out of middle school, so I guess it can't be helped." This situation dragged on for 3 months, and I was at my breaking point. When I tried to discuss the issue with Ted, he dismissed my concerns, saying he was too exhausted from work. His company had recently undergone major layoffs, increasing his workload and often requiring him to work late. Despite this, I was determined to address the problem with my mother-in-law directly. Before Ted left for work, I asked if we could talk after work that night, outside the house, since my mother-in-law would be at home. I wasn't sure how a calm discussion was even possible, given Ted's complaints about being overwhelmed with work. Despite his exhaustion, I earnestly pleaded with him. "Please, I'm begging you," I said, hoping to move him with my sincerity. Reluctantly, he agreed, though he emphasized it had to be a very brief meeting. We decided to meet at a cafe near his office at 8:00 p.m. to minimize my time spent alone with my mother-in-law at home. I prepared dinner in advance and left the house a bit early, avoiding any mention of my plans to her to prevent her snide remarks. Arriving early at the meeting spot, I wandered around the town, a rare treat since I usually confine myself to cooking and rarely explored the city alone. I found the walk refreshing. While browsing in a shopping mall, contemplating buying something for Ted, I was struck by a startling realization. My breath caught as I saw Ted walking with another woman. I rubbed my eyes, ducking my sight, but there was no mistake. It was definitely him. I watched as they left the store, and driven by a mix of curiosity and dread, I followed them. They eventually retreated to a secluded area where they embraced each other. Their actions were unmistakable. This was an affair. Overwhelmed with shock and heartache, I began to cry uncontrollably. Unable to bear the pain, I left the scene and messaged Ted, saying that something urgent had come up and I couldn't meet him that night. My mind raced with questions. Why? Since when? Who was she? I felt nauseous, the image of what I had just witnessed replaying in my mind. Somehow, I made it back home, where my mother-in-law was waiting. "Sophia, where have you been? It's not normal to leave without saying a word. Don't you have any common sense? You usually let us know before you go out," she scolded. I had no energy to argue and silently went to the kitchen, where I saw the dinner I had prepared. I had prepared a special meal for Ted, but he barely touched it, which left me feeling regretful and brought me to tears once again. That night, I stayed locked in my room. Even when Ted came home, I couldn't bring myself to face him and chose to ignore him instead. "Sophia, are you awake?" Ted knocked on the door several times. Normally, I would have prepared a snack for him upon his return, but not tonight. He must have noticed the absence of the snack and expressed his concern. "What's going on? I adjusted my work schedule to make time for our dinner. It's problematic to cancel like this, he said. How could he say he was waiting for me when he had clearly been spending time with another woman? My cancellation shouldn't have been a problem for him. It felt like he thought I was oblivious to everything. Ted began to complain to his mother, who had come to the front of the room. What's happening, Ted? It's late and noisy, she said. Mom, Sophia, and I had dinner plans, but she suddenly canceled and won't even talk to me now, Ted lamented, sounding like he was the wronged party. My mother-in-law joined in with her sarcastic remarks. Really, Sophia? You left without saying a word, neglected your duties, and are so irresponsible. I was looking forward to our dinner and even adjusted my work schedule for it. To think she would cancel on such an important commitment with her husband. If we had kids, imagine the trouble. As my mother-in-law unjustly criticized me, the thought of exposing Ted's affair flashed through my mind. But what Ted said next was even more shocking than the criticism I was receiving. There's no need to worry about that. Sophia can't have kids and she's already 30. I've given up on the idea of having children with her, Ted said, revealing my infertility, a secret I had only shared with him before we married. I had hoped to protect him from the hurt by asking him to keep it a secret, and he had promised to do so. Hearing it revealed like this was beyond belief. Oh, so Sophia can't have children. What a disappointment, Ted's mother said. Maybe I chose the wrong person. We've been deceived all along. She didn't want to lose the marriage to you because she thought she wouldn't find another opportunity. Unable to endure the pain any longer, I put on my headphones, cranked up the volume, and drowned out the world with music. That night, sleep eluded me as my mind replayed the images of Ted's infidelity and the harsh words I had heard. My heart felt like it was being ripped apart by sadness and anguish. Weeks later, Ted's relatives were coming over for a marriage celebration. I hadn't wanted any celebration, but it seemed my mother-in-law had taken it upon herself to organize one. She informed the relatives that I was a restaurant chef and handed me a list of dishes to prepare. Although there were many dishes to make, cooking itself was never a problem for me. In fact, it was my greatest joy. I decided to give it my all, pouring my heart into each dish. Immersing myself in cooking brought me relief from daily stress and reminded me of the warmth of my parents' kitchen. On the day of the gathering, about 10 relatives arrived. Our living room wasn't very spacious, but everyone managed to find a spot. Wow, the food looks delicious. Did you prepare all of this? They marveled, savoring the dishes I had made. Their enjoyment brought tears of joy to my eyes. I'm so glad you enjoy my cooking. Thank you, I said, bowing in appreciation. Their heartfelt compliments made me feel appreciated, and I was overwhelmed with gratitude. Of course, it's delicious. We should be thanking you. Please make it again sometime, they responded warmly. However, just as I was basking in the praise, my mother-in-law interjected. It's not that great. The dishes are too rich and greasy for everyday use. They give me heartburn and will probably raise my blood pressure. Is she trying to kill me? The atmosphere soared immediately. Ted, engrossed in his phone, remained oblivious to the tension in the room. My mother-in-law continued her criticism. I've heard her family's restaurant is popular, but it's just in a small country town. The customers are low quality and the food is coarse. Besides, she didn't even finish high school, can't hold down a decent job, and can't have kids. She's a total disappointment as a daughter-in-law. The relatives looked on coldly. A woman close to my age whispered, I don't know how you put up with her. It's okay, this is the last time, I thought to myself, feeling a pang of sadness. With a forced smile, I whispered back, watch this, and then loudly announced, everyone, please take a look at this, as I held up my smartphone. The screen displayed a photo of Ted embracing his lover. The room's attention shifted immediately. What are you doing? Ted yelled, rushing towards me. What am I doing? Just revealing the truth, I replied loudly, facing Ted with a mix of anger and resolve. His face reddened, and he tried to deny it. I don't know what you're talking about. This is a lie. I would never do such a thing, Ted protested. His mother, initially trying to support him, was now speechless and stunned into silence. Determined to expose the full truth, I continued, Ted has been having an affair. I hired a detective agency and gathered substantial evidence. These photos are genuine. A detective agency. Evidence. Ted's mother stammered, her disbelief evident. Ignoring her, I firmly declared, as of today, we are getting a divorce. I will also be pursuing alimony for the mental distress I've endured. And to my mother-in-law, I have recorded all the harassment. I will also be seeking compensation from you, I declared firmly, causing both Ted and his mother to recoil in shock. They began to retort, trying to deflect responsibility. Hiring a detective is such a cowardly move, Ted's mother said sharply. You should be grateful you even got to marry Ted. That's right, Ted added. You're the one who forced Ted into this marriage and caused all this discomfort. It's your fault. Despite their protests, their words were meaningless to me. The evidence of the affair and harassment was irrefutable. It's a lie, right, Safia? It's not too late for us to start over. That woman in the photo was just coming on to me, and I was merely bothered by it. It's a chance to set things straight, Ted tried to justify. Ted continued to spin excuses, but I was unmoved. Even if you were really being pursued, it doesn't change the fact of the affair, I said, maintaining my composure. One of the relatives who had earlier whispered support to me spoke up. Sophie, you did well. Her encouragement was comforting, and for the first time in a while, I felt a sense of relief and clarity. Our divorce was finalized smoothly. Ted's affair became known at his company, leading to his transfer from the head office to a different branch. He moved out of our home and relocated with his mother, likely closer to his new job. I received the alimony from Ted and his mother and decided to return to my parents' house for a while. My parents were initially surprised by the news of my divorce but welcomed me warmly without judgment. I contemplated whether to help out at the family restaurant or further my culinary studies. My father suggested, why don't you go abroad? It might be challenging, but gaining diverse experiences could be invaluable. The restaurant will be here for you when you return. Taking his advice, I used the alimony to fund a culinary journey abroad. I honed my skills under renowned chefs at a 3-star restaurant and during this time met a French chef. We had a short courtship but quickly bonded over our shared passion for cooking. We married and became supportive partners in our culinary pursuits. After 5 years abroad, we returned to New York as promised. My parents had kept the restaurant thriving, and my husband began showcasing his culinary skills there as well. Our unique flavors and beautiful presentations attracted attention, making the restaurant even more vibrant and popular. Now, as we have taken over the restaurant from my parents, my husband and I live a fulfilling life together, dedicated to our craft. One day, I received a letter from my former mother-in-law. Her message was an unexpected apology. I too faced harsh criticism from my own mother-in-law regarding my cooking and housekeeping. I found your cooking truly delightful, and I admit I was envious. I took my frustrations out on you. Now, as I try to replicate your flavors in my own cooking, I realize how special your skills were. Though I doubt I'll ever match them, I hope you might taste my cooking someday. I am genuinely sorry. Her words touched me, and I felt a softening of my feelings towards her. I hoped that, someday, we could share a meal together with smiles. For that possibility, I was determined to keep improving my culinary skills.
Why are you getting in my way? Since I said I'm going to live here, I'll take everything unnecessary outside and quickly bring in my stuff. My mother-in-law announced loudly outside the store I manage. My husband Sean, who was standing next to her, just laughed. At that moment, a black car pulled up. My name is Shelley, and I'm 31 years old. Sean and I got married 4 years ago. His father passed away when Sean was young, so his mother raised him alone. Sean graduated from university and got a job at a local manufacturing company. He's kind-hearted and soft-spoken, but he's easily influenced by others, which makes it hard for him to advance in his career. I also graduated from university and initially worked at a cosmetics company, but I never gave up on my dream of becoming an esthetician. While working, I attended beauty school at night and trained at a top esthetician shop. I pursued this dream because I was always self-conscious about the shape of my face. I had received hurtful comments about it since I was young. However, in high school, while walking with friends, I got a free trial coupon for an aesthetic treatment and decided to try it that day. The shop was white and clean, with a comforting scent, and a very beautiful esthetician took care of me. I was immediately drawn to the charm of the place. She listened to my concerns and gave me a genuine treatment, even though it was free. I'll never forget the surprise I felt when I looked in the mirror afterward. She said, "It's our job to solve problems and bring out people's confidence." Her words moved me, and I felt tears well up. This experience made me want to help others, leading me to choose this profession. Sean and I met through a friend's introduction, and after several dates, we grew closer and got married after about 2 years of dating. Sean is gentle but not very assertive, which balanced well with my strong personality, at least until his mother came into the picture. When we talked about getting married, his mother repeatedly asked us to live with her at her home in the suburbs, which was inconvenient for commuting. We managed to convince her otherwise and started our married life alone. Then a year ago, I quit my job and opened my own aesthetic salon, a dream I had for many years. Although I used to juggle part-time jobs, starting my own business made me much busier than before, leading to more frequent disagreements in the life Sean and I shared. Still, we made efforts to maintain our bond as a couple by having breakfast together and letting each other know when we would be home. One evening, as I returned home late, Sean, who would usually be asleep by then, was waiting for me with a serious expression. "Shelley, there's something my mother told me," he began. He revealed that his mother had accumulated debts, and it had reached the point where she had to sell the family home. I was shocked. His mother had always been reckless with money and lived without a plan. He further explained that his mother had used the money his father had saved for Sean's tuition, forcing Sean to rely on scholarships for university. This behavior was why I had refused to live with her when we were newly married. The sale of her house meant she would have nowhere to live, which made me feel uneasy. "Can we let my mother live with us?" Sean asked, but I quickly cut him off. "It's impossible. We absolutely cannot live together. I don't mean to speak ill of your mother, but she would end up dipping into our living expenses. Isn't your mother still working? She should rent an apartment with her income and live alone." I strongly appealed to Sean, desperately wanting to avoid living together. It hurt to criticize his mother, but it was necessary. "No, actually there are debts that can't be covered even by selling the family home, so I suggested cutting expenses to allocate more towards debt repayment," Sean replied. "You can't just decide that," I responded. "I understand what you're saying, Shelley. I take back what I said earlier, and I'll talk to her about living on her own," he said, but I was skeptical. Sean always seems to accept my opinion when he's with me, but he becomes speechless in front of his mother. I was deeply anxious that his mother might eventually force us into living together. Sure enough, the next day, I got a call from Sean's mother. "Shelley, this is terrible. Do you really hate the idea of living with me that much? I held back when you two first got married, thinking you were newlyweds, but this time it's unavoidable. I'm about to lose my home. Even if we're not blood-related, what kind of cruel daughter-in-law are you to abandon a mother?" My mother-in-law harshly criticized me. "I'm sorry, but I have to oppose this. Our house is too small for even the two of us, so we can't provide another room," I calmly explained to her, but my calmness only made her angrier. "It's unacceptable for a wife to go against her husband's words. I will retrain you to be a proper wife, so be prepared," she said and abruptly hung up the phone. This was another reason I refused to live together. I've always struggled with her domineering personality. It's frustrating how Sean gets swept up in her assertiveness and becomes submissive. The next day, even though it was early morning, my mother-in-law showed up at our house. "Sean, Shelley, are you there? I've come to talk, so open up quickly," she called out loudly without using the intercom and banged on the door. Worried about disturbing the neighbors, I quickly let her inside, but she ignored me and went straight to wake Sean, who was still asleep. "I have to move out of that house by next week. Don't worry about what this daughter-in-law says, quickly start preparing for my sake," she said, hitting Sean on the back. I wondered how a man over 30 could be treated like this by his mother, but I couldn't just stand by and watch. "Mother, please calm down a bit," I intervened, to which she directed a sharp glare at me. "How can I calm down? This situation is your fault. It's because of your selfishness," she snapped. Tension filled the air between us. Sean, seeing this, said, "Mom, I'm sorry. I'll figure something out, just wait a little longer," and suddenly began to apologize earnestly. Seeing him like this left me dumbfounded. However, my mother-in-law seemed somewhat satisfied with his response. "You have 1 more week. Make sure you sort it out by then," she said, and then left. "Sean, why do you act so helplessly, and what exactly do you plan to do?" I asked as I pressed him. Sean visibly became angry. "Be quiet, Shelley. Can't you show a bit more understanding? Why am I always the one being blamed?" he shouted and then covered his head with a blanket. Sean raising his voice was unheard of, and I began to feel anxious that something unusual might happen this time. My premonition was right. The situation worsened the next week. As set by my mother-in-law, she and Sean took an unexpected action. That day, I visited the bank in the morning for work and planned to head to the store in the afternoon. The store opens in the afternoon, so I had left the preparations to my staff. However, before opening, I received a call from my staff telling me there was a serious issue at the store and that I needed to come quickly. I changed my plans and hurried to the store. To my surprise, when I arrived, my mother-in-law and Sean were confidently walking around inside. "What are you doing? Customers will be arriving soon, so please leave," I said. There were several beds in the store, separated by partitions, but my mother-in-law was lying on the beds and measuring them. "What are you talking about? This is a viewing, isn't it? There are beds here and this room is perfect for me. I don't need all of it, but I will use at least half. It's equipped for privacy, and it's discreet, so no worries. But this bed is a bit small. I'll use 2 of them," she said while arranging 2 beds together by herself. Incredibly, Sean was smiling and agreeing with her plan. "Sean, what is this? Moving here is not something I can allow. If this is a joke, stop it right now," I appealed, but I was confused by the unexpected actions of my mother-in-law and Sean. If it becomes public that someone is actually living in the esthetician store, it could damage its reputation. My store has been highly rated for its emphasis on hygiene, and many customers have supported us because of this. However, I couldn't let their selfish actions ruin the store's reputation. "Please stop this and leave. We're about to open, and we have many reservations. If you stay here, I'll call the police," I shouted. Hearing the word police, my mother-in-law and Sean looked a bit worried. "Let's leave it for today, but I'm definitely planning to live here," she said as she left with Sean. I apologized to my staff and quickly tidied up the store. I expected my mother-in-law to be unreasonable, but I was shocked that Sean went along with it. From the look on his face, it was clear he had decided to side with his mother. That night, Sean didn't come home. I wondered if he was avoiding me or if he just didn't care anymore. Still, I needed to make sure something like this didn't happen again, so I called Sean. "Hello, Sean?" "Ah, hello." Sean sounded reluctant to talk. "Please tell me your mother's actions today were a joke. If she starts living in the store, it will be ruined instantly. You know this store depends on customer trust. If your mother tries anything strange again, you must stop her. Do you understand?" Sean didn't respond and hung up. Seeing his reaction, I realized something. Sean couldn't resist his mother's constant pressure and had chosen to stand by her. It seemed easier for him to give in to his mother than to stand up for us. But this meant my store was in real danger. I was deeply troubled. How could I protect the store I love? I spent the night worrying, and before I knew it, it was morning. The next day was a day off for my salon, but I had a bad feeling, so I went to the store. While I was cleaning, a large truck suddenly stopped in front of the store. I rushed outside to see movers starting to unload furniture and prepare to bring it inside. When I asked the workers, they confirmed that my mother-in-law had requested this, and they were trying to bring her furniture into the store. "Please wait, I cannot accept this here," I firmly protested, but the workers didn't stop. They were just doing their job and had to complete the work they were hired to do. I managed to convince the workers to pause temporarily and quickly called for help. The workers were confused by the interruption and seemed to be contacting my mother-in-law. It looked like she and Sean would be arriving soon. Eventually, my mother-in-law and Sean showed up. "Why are you getting in my way? Since I said I'm going to live here, I'll take everything unnecessary outside and quickly bring in my stuff," my mother-in-law ordered. "That's right, Mom is going to live here starting today," Sean added with a chuckle. Even though they were confused, the workers began following her orders to move things outside. "Stop doing as you please," I shouted. Just then, a black luxury car stopped behind the truck. A large man in a double-striped suit and a stylish hat stepped out of the car. His commanding presence was immediately noticeable. He was clearly no ordinary person. The man approached with a deep voice. "What's all this commotion? Isn't this disturbing the neighborhood? Shelley, are you having some trouble?" "Yes, I am. These people are trying to take over my shop and live here," I responded. Hearing this, the man looked towards my mother-in-law and Sean and calmly asked, "It seems there is some sort of trouble here. Is there a reason for this? Overwhelmed by the man's presence, my mother-in-law hesitated. What are you talking about? Don't meddle in family matters. This woman is my daughter-in-law, so what's the problem with moving into her house? At that moment, the man gently removed his hat and said, I see, that's what this is about. My daughter has always been well taken care of by you. I hear about it often. Sean, it's been a long time, he said with a warm smile. Father-in-law? Sean stepped back in surprise. This man was, in fact, my father. His appearance was far from ordinary, and Sean had always been intimidated by my family. We didn't have a wedding ceremony, just a meeting between the families, and since then, my father and my mother-in-law hadn't met. At that meeting, my mother-in-law and Sean were so intimidated by my father's presence that they left quickly without much conversation, and it seemed my mother-in-law didn't remember his face. Father-in-law, it's been a while, my mother-in-law said, sweating profusely. No, I haven't caused any trouble. I just brought some belongings because I thought I could live in Shelley's shop. I haven't caused trouble for anyone, she explained, trying to act innocent while urging the workers to continue. You intend to live here? I can't permit that, my father said sternly. I own this building. The first floor is rented out as Shelley's aesthetic salon, and my daughter and I have a formal contract as the landlords and business operators. It is not allowed to use this place as a residence. If violated, you will need to vacate immediately. I've just witnessed a violation. According to the contract, you must vacate immediately, my father said with a piercing gaze. I could feel the overwhelming authority in his eyes. I understand. I can't make any excuses for this violation. We will vacate immediately, I responded. My father nodded and turned his gaze to my mother-in-law and Sean. As you heard, I've agreed with the tenant to terminate the lease. If you enter here again, I'll have to call the police. You are now outsiders. Please leave this place. Saying that, he led me inside the shop, and we closed the shutter in front of them. My mother-in-law and Sean stood there, dazed for a while, but soon I could hear them arguing with the movers. The movers, needing to rush to their next job, eventually left the belongings on the roadside and departed. Sean, handle this for now. Bring it to our apartment, my mother-in-law instructed. Sean, following her orders, quickly arranged a rental car and began transporting the belongings. Watching through a gap in the shutter, I said, it turned out just as expected. They're heading to our apartment. I'm glad I acted promptly. Thank you, Dad. My father's stern demeanor softened, and he smiled. Maybe I went a bit too far. Despite his intimidating appearance, my father is actually a very kind person. He dresses this way because he loves gangster films, but he's usually just a friendly local real estate agent. They're sure to be surprised when they arrive at the apartment. We chuckled quietly to ourselves. In reality, all the furniture and household items from the apartment had already been removed, leaving only Sean's personal belongings behind. After a while, my mother-in-law called, clearly distressed. What happened? The room is empty. Where is the furniture? Her voice was agitated and angry. I responded calmly, I have terminated the apartment lease. I was the leaseholder and I made the payments, so it was within my rights to cancel it. The apartment is owned by my father, and we plan to dispose of any remaining belongings as abandoned property and change the locks soon. If you don't collect the personal items quickly, you'll have to meet my father again. Her voice trembled upon hearing my father's name. So, where have you moved to? Let us come there. Won't you let us stay with you? I answered with a snort, I've just decided to divorce Sean, and we will not live together anymore. I recently told Sean that if you interfere with my shop, I would seek a divorce. He agreed, and I've kept his response as evidence. Due to the influence of you and Sean, I can no longer continue my aesthetic business in this building. Therefore, based on the agreement with Sean, I am proceeding with a divorce. As for the furniture, it belonged to me before our marriage, and it is only natural that I take it all. Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law began yelling at Sean, who was next to her. How can you so easily agree to such a serious decision as divorce? The situation obviously required proper handling. I could hear Sean exclaim in surprise. You shouldn't prolong this issue. Look for a new place to live instead, I told them before ending the call. Afterward, my mother-in-law and Sean struggled to find a new home and eventually had to rent a house from distant relatives. Sean's commute became difficult, and he quit his job to work part-time at a rural deli while scrambling to pay off his mother's debts. Meanwhile, I was able to move into a property owned by my father immediately. As for the termination of the aesthetic shop's lease, it was actually part of a plan, and in reality, the business continues to operate as before. Now the popularity of my aesthetic shop has grown significantly, and it's become so sought after that reservations are difficult to secure, even attracting celebrities. We warmly welcome male clients, and I regularly provide various beauty treatments for my father. Although he is nearing 70, the regular care at our shop has rejuvenated his skin, making him feel a bit closer to the actor he has always admired. Through these experiences, I've come to realize again that the essence of my job is to give each client confidence. The memory of my first free aesthetic treatment when I was in high school remains vivid, and the excitement and fresh feelings from that day continue to inspire my daily work. That experience taught me what I should offer through my interactions with many customers. I also think about Sean occasionally. If he had more self-confidence, perhaps a different future could have been possible for him. Despite being so close to me, it was difficult to provide him with the right support. His situation has taught me how challenging it can be to offer objective help due to closeness. If, in the future, Sean visits our aesthetic shop, I plan to interact with him impartially and spare no effort in supporting him to maximize his potential confidence. If I can give him the courage to take a new step forward, I believe it would be profoundly meaningful. Hey there, I'm Sheila, and I guess you could say I'm living the suburban dream. I've been married to my amazing husband, Chris, for 4 years now, and it's been quite an adventure. We met in college, both studying business, and there was just something about his smile and easygoing personality that drew me in. From the beginning, we were inseparable, staying up late to study, laughing at inside jokes, and planning our future together. Fast forward a few years and we got married, promising to stick by each other through thick and thin. The whole for better or worse thing seemed easy at the time, but little did I know our journey was about to take a challenging turn, thanks to my mother-in-law. Chris and his mom Martha have always been super close, which sometimes felt a bit much to me. Martha raised him almost entirely on her own after her divorce, and it seemed like she was determined to keep him under her wing, even after he moved out. I heard stories about how she used to match outfits with him and always stayed close while he played with his friends. Martha had this habit of planning Chris' life down to the minute, almost like she was the one in charge. Even when he went off to college, her clinginess didn't stop. She'd call him several times a day to check on his schedule and even visited him twice a week. This really affected Chris. He's a great guy, but you could tell he felt the pressure of meeting her expectations. When Chris introduced me to Martha for the first time at dinner, I could feel her sizing me up, analyzing every detail. "Sheila, it's so lovely to finally meet you. Chris talks about you all the time," she said. "Thank you, Martha, it's great to meet you too," I replied. "Oh, I'm sure it is. Chris has a way of surprising us with his choices," she added, with a hint of something I couldn't quite place. Then she asked what I do for a living, and when I told her I work in marketing, she wasn't all that interested. Instead, she started talking about Chris' ex-girlfriends, like Lily, an artsy girl who was always lost in her own world, and another girl who was a musical talent, but too free-spirited for Martha's taste. "Mom, you're embarrassing me," Chris said, trying to change the subject. "No matter who comes into Chris' life, I'll always be the first woman he loves," Martha said with a smile. From the start, it felt like everything I said or did was being compared to what Martha thought was best. If I mentioned a movie I liked, she'd say Chris didn't enjoy that genre. If I talked about a place I wanted to visit, she'd point out that Chris had already been there with her. It felt like she was trying to prove she knew Chris better than anyone, and I was just trying to keep up. Things got even crazier when Martha's kitchen caught fire, turning her house into a mess. She needed a place to stay while it was being fixed, so of course she moved in with us. And the day she arrived, she handed me a 14-page rulebook. Yes, you heard that right, a rulebook. "I'm really sorry about the fire at your place. That must have been tough. You're welcome to stay here as long as you need. Let me grab those bags for you." "Martha." "Thanks, Sheila. The fire was a nightmare and really shook things up. But before we all get settled, there's something I want to give you." "Sheila." "Oh, all right. What is it? Martha. It's my little creation. A guide to keeping peace around the house. Sheila. A guide? Okay, that's interesting. Martha. You got it. It's just my way of keeping things on track while I'm staying here. Sheila. What's with all these rules? We don't need a rule book to function as adults, do we? Martha. Oh, Sheila, I get it. But having a few ground rules can prevent unnecessary drama, you know? And breaking them might have some consequences. Sheila. Consequences. Are we running a boot camp here? Martha. Stop complaining. Now let's tackle those bags, and I'm curious to see where you've set me up. After I showed Martha her room and returned to mine, I couldn't resist flipping through her rule book. Each page was filled with bizarre instructions like vacuuming the living room precisely at 8:30 a.m., serving dinner at 6:45 p.m., and my personal favorite, washing the bathroom tiles with lemon-scented cleaner every other day. I was shocked. What kind of controlling behavior was this? When Chris got back from work, I showed him the rulebook. Before bed, we both started laughing at how ridiculous it was. It felt like we'd stepped into another world where everything was super organized. Chris. Okay, this one takes the cake. Arrange the spice jars in alphabetical order. I guess our spices are getting a degree in linguistics. Sheila. And don't forget Gourmet Tuesdays, where I apparently have to whip up a 5-course meal from scratch. That's one way to turn our kitchen into a Michelin-star restaurant. Chris. You know, honey, my mom means well, but she needs to realize that I'm grown up now. This is our house, not hers. We have our own way of doing things. Sheila. You're right. So promise me you won't take this rulebook too seriously. It's just her way of showing she cares, even if it's a bit eccentric. Chris. Deal. No alphabetized spices or gourmet extravaganzas in our future, I promise. The next morning, I woke up to find Chris already dressed and ready for work. He kissed me goodbye, and I noticed Martha's rulebook still sitting on my bedside table. It was around 8:00 a.m., and according to the book, I was supposed to vacuum the living room by 8:30 a.m. Yeah, right. I took a shower, got dressed, grabbed a granola bar, and left for work before Martha could catch me. When I walked in after a tough day at the office, hoping to relax on the couch, I was met with chaos. Chris and Martha were in the middle of a heated argument in the living room. Martha was clearly upset. Martha. Chris, I'm really struggling to understand why Sheila can't seem to respect the rules I've set in this house. Did you notice she just left for work this morning without doing any of the chores? Chris. Mom, we've talked about this. The house is turning into chaos, and it's all about maintaining order, right? But I've grown out of those rules. Martha, rules are how I raised you, and they're still important. You think you know him better, Sheila? Because I distinctly remember him asking for pancakes every Sunday morning when he was a kid. Sheila. Martha, seriously? Who do you think you are? This is our house. Martha. This is my son's house, and it belongs to me as much as it belongs to you. Sheila. Excuse me, Chris? Chris. Mom. I need to come clean. This is Sheila's house. She owns it. Martha. What? How is that possible? Sheila. Martha. When Chris and I got married, my parents gifted me this house as a first anniversary present. It's under my name. Martha. Chris, you never told me that. Chris. I didn't want to complicate things, Mom. I let you believe the house was mine, and I'm really sorry, Mom. After Chris stormed off dramatically, I was left standing there, completely dumbfounded by what he'd just revealed. My mind was racing, trying to understand why he'd lie about something as big as our house. Chris had never lied to me before. He'd always been the sweetest, most genuine guy. I took a deep breath and headed to our bedroom, gently pushing the door open. There he was, Chris, looking like he was drowning in guilt. Sheila. Hey, can we talk? Chris. Yeah, I guess we should. Look, I'm not mad or anything. I just can't wrap my head around why you'd lie about the house, of all things. We've always been open and honest with each other. Chris. I know, honey. That's what's been eating me up. I should have just told you the truth from the start. Sheila. Okay, so what's the deal? Chris. It's my mom. She's always been on my case. Ever since I was a kid, she's had these expectations about who I should be and what I should achieve. It's like she wanted this perfect version of me. Sheila. And you thought lying about the house would, what? Impress her? Chris. No, not impress, more like avoid disappointing her. She's always been proud of being in control of things. I thought if she found out that you're the one who actually owns the house, it would shake things up. She'd be disappointed in me for not being the son she wants me to be. Sheila. Chris, you're your own person. You've always been kind, hardworking, and true to yourself. You're the man I fell in love with. Why did she get to define your worth? Hearing Chris's backstory with his toxic mother really hit me hard. Growing up with that kind of negativity had made him feel like he had to lie to his own mom. The whole situation was so unfair. Chris, the most laid-back and caring guy I knew, was carrying around this heavy baggage from his messed-up family. He deserved better. A childhood that didn't leave him feeling like he had to lie or prove himself. What really got to me was how toxic Martha could be. It made sense why she had no friends and had nowhere to go when her kitchen burned down. I was angry that she had this hold over Chris, making him feel like he had to lie to keep the peace. Her toxic presence was poisoning everything in our lives. The next day was seriously weird. I was getting ready for work, fully prepared for Martha to come at me with her usual chore checklist or some sarcastic comment. But to my surprise, she was completely silent. I left for work feeling a mix of relief and suspicion, wondering if this was the calm before the storm. When I came home after a long day, hoping to relax, I walked into a complete mess. The furniture was moved around, and the vases and plant pots from my beloved indoor garden were nowhere to be seen. Sheila, Martha, what have you done? Martha. Oh, Sheila, I just thought the room needed a bit of a change. Sheila, change? Martha, this is our home. You can't just come in and rearrange everything without even asking. Martha. Well, I thought it would be better this way, and those plants were taking up too much space. Sheila. You know what, Martha? I'm just tired of your constant need to control everything. I invited you into my home, gave you a space here, and what do? You find new ways to make my life miserable. Martha. Oh please, Sheila, spare me the drama. You're overreacting. They were just plants. When I stepped into my bedroom, I was shocked. My bed was against a new wall. The photo frames on the dresser were cramped, and my desk was in a spot that made no sense. I couldn't believe Martha thought she had the right to rearrange everything. I stormed into Martha's room, my frustration reaching a boiling point. Enough was enough. Sheila, Martha, seriously, what were you thinking? You had no right to go into my bedroom and rearrange things without asking. Martha, you're blowing this way out of proportion. Sheila. Martha, we need to talk. I've been trying to stay calm, but I can't hold back anymore. You've been treating me like some sort of intruder in my own home, and it's not okay. I get that you have your rules and your idea of how things should be, but being a mom doesn't give you a free pass to mess with our lives. Martha. Whoa, where's all this coming from? Sheila. It's been building up for months. Your critiques, your eye rolls, you act like you're the guru of life, especially when it comes to Chris. But guess what? Your way isn't the only way. Believe it or not, I've been guiding him too since his dad left, and I give you props for that. But that doesn't mean you're the boss of our lives. I've seen how your need for control is stressing Chris out. He's walking around like he's carrying a ton of bricks on his shoulders, worried that he's not living up to your expectations. I'm starting to see things clearly now. I notice when Chris hesitates to speak his mind around you, and I hear it when he tries to keep you happy no matter what. Chris is a grown man, and I'm not letting you control him anymore. You've just brought trouble on yourself, Sheila, by questioning me as a parent. You'll see soon. After that showdown with Martha, I was emotionally drained and completely exhausted. I told Chris everything that happened later that night, and I found comfort in his arms. He was like my shield against the emotional storm. He apologized to me and told me that his mom wasn't going to stay with us permanently and that she would be gone soon. Chris' "she'll be gone soon" comment started to make sense, so I didn't let it bother me much. But the next morning, while I was getting ready for work, Martha came up to me out of nowhere and apologized. She said she tried to relax and not interfere. Surprisingly, she stuck to it. Things were going pretty smoothly for a while. Martha seemed determined to be helpful, pitching in with chores and being all nice and cooperative. She even made dinner for Chris and me, and we actually sat down like a normal family to eat. It felt weird, but honestly, it was kind of nice. For a moment, Chris and I started thinking maybe she was turning a corner. But then, in about a week, everything took an unexpected turn. I came home one day after work, and Martha greeted me, asked how my day was, and handed me some homemade protein bars. It seemed like a nice gesture, so I took one and had a bite. I ended up eating the whole thing, but soon after I felt a weird lump in my throat, and my skin broke out in rashes. Panic set in. Did Martha put peanuts in these? I called out for her. You know I'm allergic to peanuts. What did you put in those bars, Martha? Oh my gosh, Sheila, I forgot about your allergy. I didn't mean to, I swear. Seriously, Martha. I could die. I rushed to my room to get my EpiPen, and Martha followed me. Where did I put that EpiPen? I need it now. Looking for something, Sheila? My EpiPen. You rearranged this room. Where did you put it? This isn't a game, Martha. My EpiPen is a matter of life and death. Well, we'll just have to find it, won't we? I could feel my body shutting down, like I was running on empty. My vision got blurry, and a sense of doom settled in. I knew things were seriously messed up. As I was trying not to black out, I heard Chris's voice cutting through the haze. He was on the phone, talking like his life depended on it. An ambulance arrived and the paramedics quickly got to work stabilizing me. The ride to the hospital was a blur, with sirens and beeping sounds all around. It felt like I was drifting in and out of a strange dream until I finally closed my eyes. When I woke up in the hospital, Chris was there, looking worn out but relieved. I was done with Martha's manipulation, her toxicity, and her complete disregard for anyone's well-being except her own. As soon as I was discharged, I had a serious heart-to-heart with Chris. He knew it was time to take a stand too. He had seen firsthand the damage his mother's actions could cause, and he was ready to set things right. A couple of days after I was discharged from the hospital, Chris and I went home. Mom, we need to talk. I don't know what Sheila told you, but it was all a mistake. Cut it out. You know what, Mom? I used to think I had a mother, someone who cared, someone who wanted the best for her family. But I was dead wrong. I didn't realize I had a monster for a mom, someone who's willing to manipulate just to satisfy her own twisted need for control. Chris, no honey. I need to get this out, Mom. You've torn this family apart with your toxic behavior. You've taken every opportunity to belittle and demean Sheila, someone who's done nothing but support and care for all of us. And what did she get in return? Neglect and her allergies triggered because you forgot? It's sickening. You nearly killed Sheila. Let that sink in. You almost killed your son's wife. Didn't you even think about me once? Chris, please, I never meant for things to go this far. I know I've made mistakes, and I'm so sorry for what happened to Sheila. Mom, listen carefully. You have two choices. You can leave on your own terms, or I'll make sure you're out of here. You can stay in a motel or wherever you want, but you're not staying here. This is where it ends, Mom. Our relationship, whatever was left of it, ends right here. I don't have a mother anymore, not in the way that matters. Honestly, I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of satisfaction when Chris showed his mom the door. She loved him so much that it must have hurt like crazy to be rejected by her own son. But she deserved it after the protein bar situation. We've lost touch with Martha completely. No calls, no texts, no sign of where she went. It's like she vanished into thin air. And as much as I hoped she would grow and find her way, I can't help but wonder where she ended up. Despite all the drama, she's still Chris's mom, and that worry for her is still there. Chris ran into a couple of construction guys working on her house, and they told him she drops by sometimes to check on things, so I guess she's okay. Our home is no longer a battleground, and who knows if we'll ever get in touch with her again. For now, we're just trying to live in the moment.
Hi, I'm Jessica, a 30-year-old woman, and I want to share a recent experience that helped bring closure to a difficult period in my life, one that involved both my husband and his family. This chapter began a few months ago, and now that the dust has started to settle, I'm still processing the emotional fallout. I believe opening up about it might help me heal. Let's rewind to 3 years ago when I made a significant life decision. I married my boyfriend, Tyler. We met through mutual friends and enjoyed 3 wonderful years together before deciding to tie the knot. Tyler was always the life of the party, fun, attentive, and loving. He came from a well-off family and had a great job, which meant he could shower me with gifts and affection. Our bond grew stronger over our shared love for travel, and as our relationship deepened, my friends frequently praised him, genuinely happy for us. Tyler's generosity was often overwhelming. I remember when he bought me a new laptop for my college graduation, a gesture that, while incredibly kind, also made me feel uncomfortable at times. I couldn't help but notice the financial imbalance. "Tyler, I'm just a student," I'd say. "I can't match your spending. Let me at least split some costs." But Tyler would brush it off, insisting that it was normal for him to pamper his partner, just like his friends did. Eventually, I accepted his gestures, though I still sought ways to contribute within my means. Once I landed a good-paying job after graduation, I was excited to reciprocate his generosity. We started sharing expenses more equally and even talked about moving in together. "You can move in with me," Tyler said one day. "I inherited my house from my grandpa, so no rent to worry about, but we can split everything else to keep things fair." Although I had some reservations, Tyler reassured me that he had my best interests at heart, and so we embarked on this new chapter together. Things were going smoothly. Our financial responsibilities were shared fairly, given our different incomes, until I had the chance to meet Tyler's family. They lived far from us, and Tyler had work commitments, so I had to host them on my own. Before their arrival, Tyler warned me about their judgmental tendencies but didn't go into much detail. He just advised me to smile through it and not take any harsh words to heart. With that in mind, I approached the meeting with cautious optimism. However, any hope of a warm welcome quickly vanished when Tyler's parents and sister arrived. Instead of the friendly atmosphere I'd anticipated, they showed up visibly annoyed, setting a tense tone from the start. It didn't take long before their opinions about me became painfully clear. "So, you're the woman Tyler's been seeing," his mother Martha said coldly. "I didn't expect to find you living here. Do you even pay rent?" "No, Martha," I replied calmly, though her question caught me off guard. "Tyler told me the house was fully paid for, but we split all other bills evenly." Martha wasn't convinced. "Just because the house is paid for doesn't mean you can freeload. This is Tyler's house, not yours. Remember that." Her words stung, and the conversation grew more uncomfortable. Tyler's sister, Teresa, wasn't any better. She barely spoke to me, opting instead to glare or mention her marriage to a billionaire, as if to remind me of her superior status. Every attempt I made to connect with her was met with dismissiveness. Throughout their visit, Tyler offered no support. In fact, he seemed to side with his family, echoing their sentiments. His parents criticized my spending habits, particularly my purchases of makeup and skincare products, claiming they were frivolous considering my so-called limited contributions to the household. Their skepticism about my financial independence only deepened, partly because of comments Tyler had made. He casually mentioned to them, "Jessica was just a struggling student when we met," as if I'd been entirely dependent on him. While it's true Tyler supported me financially early on, his portrayal wasn't entirely accurate, and it felt like he was subtly reinforcing their negative opinions. Tyler's family's disapproval of me, combined with his passive stance, made the entire experience incredibly challenging. It left me questioning not only my relationship with them but also the dynamic between Tyler and me. I was caught off guard by these remarks and reminded Tyler that we had already adjusted our financial arrangement to split the bills equally. I explained that I had lived modestly both before and during our relationship and that any luxury items I had were gifts from him, gifts I had often warned him against due to their extravagance. Yet Tyler defended his lavish spending, claiming that his social status required him to give extravagant gifts. It became clear that his generosity was more about impressing his friends than truly caring for me. Their visit left me with a bitter feeling, so I confronted Tyler about the entire ordeal once they left. Unfortunately, he brushed it off. "Don't take it to heart, Jessica," he said dismissively. "They meant well. What they said wasn't serious. Relax, you're overreacting." Despite my concerns, he refused to acknowledge the problem. 5 months later, Tyler proposed, and despite my reservations, I accepted in a moment of happiness. We started planning our engagement party, deciding to split the costs evenly. By then, I was running a small business on the side. Tyler knew about it, but he never really showed interest in how much I was earning. To me, it was more of a fulfilling hobby than a major source of income. When it came time to organize the engagement party, I decided to indulge a bit, feeling it was an occasion worth celebrating. Tyler supported me in this, and we made sure to share the expenses equally. I even took on the additional costs of covering plane tickets for my extended family so they could attend. However, as the celebration unfolded, the same old criticisms resurfaced. "You shouldn't have splurged so much on this party, Jessica. You're draining Tyler's account before you're even married. At this rate, you'll end up with a backyard wedding," his family sneered. "I thought you were financially irresponsible, but it's worse than I imagined." Their harsh words stung once again, clouding what should have been a joyful moment with doubt and frustration. I stood my ground and firmly responded to Martha. "Yes, the party was extravagant, but we both agreed to it. I paid my share, and it was actually your son's idea to invite so many people." Tyler had insisted, and I couldn't say no, especially when he mentioned he didn't mind the expense. But the criticism continued. Martha accused me of manipulating Tyler into spending more than he should, while Teresa chimed in, claiming she knew exactly what kind of person I was and that I should have been more considerate. Frustrated and overwhelmed by the tension, I excused myself to find some peace outside on the venue's lawn. There, I overheard Teresa and her husband Justin laughing at my expense. It felt like my engagement party was falling apart, with Tyler seemingly oblivious to his family's harsh judgments. Many of his extended relatives assumed I was jobless, painting me as a dependent fiancé. Noticing my distress, my mom, always protective and perceptive, approached me. As someone who had raised me as a single parent, she understood the challenges of managing finances and urged me to reconsider the engagement, pointing out the ongoing mean comments from Tyler's family. After the party, I confronted Tyler about everything that had happened. He shrugged it off, saying they were just joking, and reassured me that financial matters didn't concern him because he loved me. But I was firm, telling him I wanted to contribute more significantly to our expenses, including rent. Once again, he dismissed the idea. As we moved forward with wedding planning, the stress only intensified. Tyler's parents continued to criticize every choice I made, accusing me of bankrupting their son. The constant scrutiny made the engagement period feel unbearable. I tried explaining that everyone, including my mom, was pitching in for the wedding expenses, but Martha sharply accused me of taking advantage of Tyler, suggesting that I was trying to drain his bank account. Amid these accusations, my in-laws unfairly branded me a gold digger. I calmly addressed Gabriel, hoping to alleviate his concerns. "Gabriel, I'm not asking for any financial help. We are completely capable of financing the wedding ourselves," I reassured him. Despite my explanations, Teresa didn't hold back her criticisms, especially about the cost of my dress and makeup for the wedding day, even though I had clarified that those were covered by my mother. The ceremony itself went smoothly, but during the reception, Martha and Gabriel continued to criticize my spending habits, accusing me of financially exploiting their son. Despite the harsh words, I knew that no matter how much I explained or defended myself, they were determined to paint me in the worst possible light. I chose to remain silent, determined not to let any conflict ruin what was supposed to be a special day. A few months later, Tyler received a significant promotion at work, and he was eager to celebrate with a grand family dinner. I was thrilled for him and wanted to make the occasion even more memorable, so I offered to cover all the expenses myself. "Tyler, I want this dinner to be something extraordinary. I'm so proud of you, and I want to celebrate your success," I told him enthusiastically. He appreciated the gesture, and I shared that my business was flourishing, providing me with a stable income, and that I had recently accessed a trust fund from my paternal grandfather. I meticulously planned the entire event, determined to make it perfect for his celebration. However, when his family arrived, they were visibly displeased, despite the positive feedback from other guests. It became clear that they had reservations about the lavishness of the dinner. During the speeches, Martha stood up, her voice loud enough to command the room. "I want to thank everyone for gathering here to celebrate my son," she began. "He's incredibly hardworking, generous, and truly deserving of this promotion. Unfortunately, his good fortune hasn't extended to his choice of a partner." The room grew tense as her words hung in the air. "It's unfortunate that, of all people, he's tied himself to what some might call a gold digger." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach, but I remained still as she continued, her tone dripping with regret. "I only wish he had seen her true nature earlier. Then maybe he wouldn't have to work so hard to support her lavish lifestyle." Her eyes scanned the room, making sure her message was heard. It's painfully obvious to everyone here that his wife has been extravagant, from the engagement party to tonight's dinner. It seems she has nearly drained his accounts. The sting of her words was sharp, but I kept my composure, knowing full well that any reaction would only fuel their baseless accusations. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. Martha added smugly, "Thank goodness we had Jessica sign a prenuptial agreement before the wedding. At least some of his assets are protected." She sighed, almost relieved, as she continued, "It's a good thing my son married someone who can at least keep up the appearance of a trophy wife." Tyler chimed in, agreeing with his mother. "I can't even afford to spend money on myself anymore. There's nothing left," he lamented, going so far as to say that marrying me was a mistake. He even compared my behavior unfavorably to what he imagined another wife might do in a similar situation. In shock and frustration, I finally spoke up. "Do you really think I'm a gold digger?" Tyler's response was sharp and hurtful. "Your lifestyle is quite damaging to my bank account." Stunned but determined to set the record straight, I confronted the accusations head-on. "Since you all think I'm such a gold digger, let me show you my bank balance. Maybe that'll clear things up." I revealed my financial independence to the room, which was met with disbelief. Amid the heated exchange, Martha pointedly accused, "Did you steal my son's money?" Tyler added suspiciously, "She must have taken it from you." Frustrated but calm, I responded, "I don't need to steal money from your son. Everything I have is from my own hard work. Besides, I recently accessed a trust fund left by my grandfather. I had plans to use it to buy a bigger house as a surprise for Tyler, but given the circumstances, that seems unlikely now." Despite my efforts to clarify, Tyler, seemingly ignoring the tension, suggested, "We can still buy the house. It'll be a wonderful gift." But I was resolute. "This is not happening. Your family has insulted me for too long, and you've never once stood up for me. Instead, you've allowed these false assumptions about me using your money to continue." My frustration was evident as I made my stance clear. Tyler, attempting to downplay the situation, claimed, "You're overreacting." But I knew I couldn't let it go this time. I was told I was overreacting, but I stood firm. "No, I'm not overreacting. Everyone here knows what your family has been saying about me. They were here when you allowed them to insult me at our engagement party." Feeling the weight of years of disrespect and humiliation, I reached a breaking point. I could no longer tolerate the toxic environment and told Tyler bluntly, I want a divorce. As Tyler tried to plead and explain, my mother intervened. "You've never defended my daughter. It's time she ends this toxic relationship for good," she declared firmly. We left the party, leaving behind a crowd of shocked attendees who whispered among themselves. Despite the dramatic scene, I was resolute in my decision to end the relationship. My mother's support was unwavering, marking the end of a painful chapter in my life. After the confrontation, I went straight to our home, gathered my belongings, and while Tyler persistently tried to reach me, I muted my phone and went to stay with my mother for solace. The next day, I contacted my cousin, a lawyer, to start drafting the divorce papers. With a prenuptial agreement in place, the process promised to be straightforward, sparing me from sharing any of my significant financial assets with Tyler. However, the situation escalated when Tyler and his family showed up at my mother's doorstep, demanding to speak with me. My mother stood firm and instructed them to leave. Meanwhile, Tyler's messages ranged from tearful apologies to unsettling threats, which I documented and prepared to use for a restraining order if necessary. My mother's steadfast support gave me strength. Tyler even attempted to confront me at my office, but after informing security, he was promptly escorted out. It was then I decided to resign from my well-paying job. My thriving business meant I no longer needed the position, and I was no longer focused on accumulating wealth but on seeking a peaceful and dignified life. I handed in my resignation that very day and began moving forward. A week later, I served the divorce papers to Tyler at his workplace, only to find out he had already been informed of my resignation. My former colleagues reported his continued attempts to send flowers and gifts to my mother's house, which we consistently returned. The ongoing harassment led me to consider relocating. With my mother's encouragement, I found an ideal house in a neighboring state, providing a sanctuary away from my ex. As I awaited the finalization of the divorce paperwork, the judge facilitated a smooth proceeding thanks to the strong prenuptial agreement. During the 5 months of our separation, I took the time to regroup and prepare for a new chapter in my life. I quickly settled into my new home, changed my number to avoid the incessant messages from Tyler and his family, and began to enjoy my newfound freedom. I heard through the grapevine that Tyler's life was falling apart. He blamed his parents for the end of our marriage and faced professional setbacks as his colleagues distanced themselves and his superiors were displeased with the negative publicity. His parents contributed to the turmoil by spreading infidelity rumors, but thankfully, these baseless accusations didn't gain traction. In contrast, my life began to flourish. I focused on growing my business and embraced my newfound freedom. I started going out more and even re-entered the dating scene. While Tyler's past actions made me cautious, I remained hopeful that I would heal and eventually find someone who truly values and cherishes me. Although Tyler's actions caused me considerable pain, the strength I gained from overcoming those challenges propelled me into a brighter future, full of possibilities and self-discovery. I look forward to what lies ahead, confident in my resilience and clearer about what I seek in relationships and in life. Hello everyone, I'm Betty. I want to share a significant chapter of my life that involved intense challenges with my in-laws and my husband while navigating a divorce. I hope my story resonates with those who have faced undue criticism from their in-laws. It all began when I met Kevin, my now estranged husband, on a dating app. I was a 20-year-old college student, and Kevin was 26, employed and stable. Despite our age difference, we fell in love. I've always believed that love isn't bound by age or looks, so Kevin being older never bothered me. However, Kevin was troubled by our age gap. He often questioned why I was with him, suggesting that I could find someone closer to my age who might be a better match. I chose Kevin because I loved him, and for me, age was just a number. Despite my reassurances, Kevin's insecurities persisted. He would say, "There must be another reason, Betty. It's not usual for someone like you to love someone like me. I wish you'd just tell me the real reason." I repeatedly assured him that my feelings were genuine and that I wasn't interested in dating someone my age. I loved him, and that's what mattered to me. Even though I tried my best to prove my affection, Kevin's self-doubt lingered, hinting at deeper self-esteem issues that seemed to have kept him single before we met. Eager to demonstrate my commitment, I made sure never to let Kevin spend excessively on me. While managing my finances as a college student, I wasn't wealthy, but I made thoughtful gifts and handled my expenses independently through part-time jobs. Kevin seemed to appreciate these efforts, but sadly, his insecurities didn't fade. It took 3 years for me to fully understand the origins of Kevin's issues when I met his parents, Samuel and Charlotte. Samuel, Kevin's father, had a dramatic change in fortune after winning the lottery. This newfound wealth brought a sense of superiority. During our first meeting, Samuel bragged about his success, saying, "Not everyone makes it big like me. I was just a hard worker, and look where it got me. Winning the lottery on my first try is rare." Samuel and Charlotte were proud of their wealth and often implied that Kevin, despite his college education, would never reach their level of financial success. Charlotte suggested that Kevin's previous partners were only interested in his money and left him as soon as they were financially better off. They openly doubted Kevin's ability to make good decisions, which infuriated me. It seemed like they painted every woman Kevin dated as a gold digger, and over time, Kevin began to believe this narrative himself. Their insinuation that I was just another gold digger became an embarrassing and hurtful part of their story. Fed up with their baseless assumptions, I stood up for both Kevin and myself. "I'm sorry, but I have to disagree. Kevin has worked hard to establish his career and will achieve even greater success in time." Samuel retorted, "That doesn't change the fact that women only want him for money. The money we have is ours, but Kevin does co-own the house. Eventually it will be his. Every time these girls see our $350,000 house." I felt a surge of frustration. "I swear, they just see dollar signs," I said, unable to hold back. "I can't speak for Kevin's past relationships, but I'm definitely not in this for the money. I love your son, and that's why we're together. I have no interest in your house." Charlotte's response was dismissive. "Don't worry, Betty. Sometimes it's hard to accept that people can be successful and live in nice houses. You live in a small rented apartment with roommates. You might start desiring it after spending time around our house." Their comments were pushing my patience to the limit. I was on the verge of losing my temper. Kevin heard everything but chose not to respond or defend himself, instead steering the conversation elsewhere. His indifference on the way home was unexpected and hurtful. Once we were home, I knew I had to address the issue directly with Kevin. Kevin, your parents are being unfair and hurtful towards us. Why did you stand up for me? Kevin sighed, his frustration evident. What did you expect me to say, Betty? My past isn't exactly encouraging. I've been used before by people who only saw my parents' wealth and made plans for when they would inherit the house. Even if they're wrong about some things, it doesn't mean they're wrong about everything. The words stung. Even if those women were after your money, that doesn't mean I am. It hurts that you stayed silent while your family insulted me. Kevin looked conflicted. You know my family is wealthy now, and maybe they have a point. I'm not accusing you of having bad intentions, but I can see why it might look questionable to others. You don't have parents, and because of that, you might seem more reliant on my inheritance. His words were almost too much to bear. What you're suggesting is absurd. Kevin, I've never pressured you to spend on me. Not having an inheritance doesn't make me a gold digger. But Kevin remained stubborn, unwilling to see my perspective. I love you, and that's what matters, Kevin said, dismissing any need for further discussion. While some might have found comfort in his declaration of love, I couldn't shake the feeling that he still harbored doubts about my intentions. I tried repeatedly to address the issue, even suggesting therapy to help him see things more clearly, but he refused, insisting there was nothing wrong. As time went on, I began to distance myself from his family. We got engaged right after I graduated from college, and I secured a decent job that allowed me to start saving for our wedding. We shared the wedding expenses equally and married when I was 23. However, the next 4 years of our marriage were rocky. Kevin frequently visited his parents and returned increasingly distant and upset. I knew Samuel and Charlotte continued to poison his mind, still branding me as a gold digger despite my pleas for him to reduce contact with them. Kevin persisted in seeing his parents often, and their negative influence began to deeply affect his view of our relationship. They convinced him that no one could truly love him for who he was. Despite my unwavering love over the years, Kevin's suspicion toward me never seemed to ease. The constant need to prove my sincerity became increasingly exhausting. The moment that truly tested us came on Kevin's birthday. Preferring a low-key celebration, we decided on a small cake party at our home, hoping to make his day special. I surprised Kevin with the expensive watch he had long admired. His excitement was palpable as he unwrapped it, but my heart sank when he suggested we show it off to his parents. Despite my hesitation, I reluctantly agreed. When we arrived, Kevin could hardly contain his enthusiasm. Mom, Dad, look at this beautiful watch Betty got me. I've wanted it for so long. Isn't it stunning? His pride was evident. Charlotte responded with a feigned surprise. Oh, Kevin, it seems she does love you after all. We were quite worried for a while. But Samuel quickly interjected. Don't be fooled, Charlotte. She's a gold digger. She married our son because of our $350,000 house. Let's not ignore the facts. I couldn't contain my frustration. Excuse me, why do you think I married your son for your house? I've been working and living in an apartment for years. If age was a concern, why would I marry someone older unless I truly loved him? I assure you, I didn't marry Kevin for his money or your house. I married him because I love him. Surely Kevin can confirm that, right? To my astonishment, Kevin remained silent. His reluctance to defend me in front of his accusing parents was deeply unsettling. I felt increasingly isolated as he avoided eye contact, sinking under their harsh assumptions. Pushed to my limit, I confronted him. Kevin, why aren't you saying anything? Your parents have always labeled me a gold digger. How will they ever see the real me if you don't speak up? Why are you so quiet? Tell them they're wrong. Kevin's hesitation was palpable. I don't know what you want me to say, Betty. Maybe my parents aren't completely wrong. There might be a possibility. His words trailed off, but the implication was clear. His doubt and inability to stand by me were more than just misunderstandings. They were a fundamental crack in our relationship, casting a shadow over our love and my place in his life. The birthday celebration quickly soared as I faced accusations. Are you serious right now, Kevin? You believe I married you for your assets? I asked, incredulous. His parents chimed in, their suspicion clear. Oddly enough, you've never talked about buying a house. Renting should be a temporary solution, not a long-term plan. You could never afford something like this on your own, so marrying Kevin and settling here seems more logical. Kevin looked at me with a mix of doubt and confusion. Yeah, Betty, why would you marry me? You might have feelings for me, but I think there's more to it than just love. I was left speechless by their words. All the love and affection I had felt for Kevin seemed to evaporate in an instant. While his parents' skepticism was hurtful, it was Kevin's agreement that cut the deepest. At that moment, I resolved to end our marriage. I didn't reveal my decision immediately. Instead, I waited for the right moment. Once Kevin and I were back home, I contacted a lawyer and began the divorce process. The lawyer assured me that everything would be prepared within a week. Meanwhile, I moved into a separate room, giving myself some space. Kevin thought I was merely cooling off and had no idea of my intentions. When the divorce papers were ready, I packed my belongings and left. Kevin, clearly distressed, called me in a panic. I told him to meet me at a specific address and to bring his parents. Despite his confusion, he complied. When they arrived, I was waiting on the porch of a stunning house. Their expressions shifted to surprise as they took in the scene. "You must be wondering why I brought you here," I said, gesturing to the luxurious surroundings. "It's a beautiful house, isn't it? No one can compare their home to this one. It's worth around $3 million in today's market. Quite expensive, right?" The dramatic setting was my way of showing them that their accusations and suspicions were unfounded. I wasn't the person they thought I was, and I needed to make that clear in the most unforgettable way. "But it's worth every penny," I continued, pointing to the lavish interior and furniture worth millions. "What is this place, Betty? I don't understand why you have access to such a house," Kevin asked, puzzled. "Why don't you all come in so we can talk properly?" I suggested, brushing off their astonishment as I led them inside. Their eyes widened in awe at the opulent decor that greeted us. The owners had spared no expense in furnishing the home. As we settled into the plush sofas, I took a deep breath, ready to address the elephant in the room. "I've made a decision, and that's why we're here," I said, handing Kevin the divorce papers. "We can proceed with an uncontested divorce if you agree." Kevin's voice was a mix of confusion and concern. "I don't understand. Why are you filing for divorce?" "It's simple," I replied, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. "You and your parents think I'm a gold digger. You believe I married you for your house and your money. Despite everything I've said, you've refused to listen. It's better for everyone if I leave, sparing you from what you deem my gold-digging tendencies." Kevin's face showed disbelief. "You're considering divorce just because my parents spoke what they believed to be the truth. That's ridiculous." "I think it's for the best," I replied firmly. His mother, watching the exchange with an unreadable expression, chimed in. "If she's so adamant, you should just sign the papers, Kevin. At least you can find someone who truly loves you." Kevin's suspicion grew. "Why did you bring us to this house, Betty? Do you expect me to buy this for you as part of our divorce settlement?" "Why would I need you to buy this house, Kevin? It's already mine," I answered calmly, watching their shock and disbelief unfold. They looked at me as if I were joking. "How on earth can you afford a house like this? You're renting, and your job isn't enough to cover something like this." "Stop lying to us," Kevin's father demanded, his tone sharp with suspicion. Their disbelief was palpable, but I was ready to prove my independence and financial capability once and for all. "I'm not lying," I asserted firmly, meeting their incredulous looks. "Kevin, remember? When I mentioned that my parents had left me an inheritance, I explained that this house was part of it. It's held in a trust for now, but I will officially inherit it when I turn 31. I don't need to work a high-paying job because I have a trust fund waiting for me." "That's impossible," Kevin interjected, his confusion palpable. "Your parents passed away a long time ago. They should have given you the house earlier." "My parents anticipated potential exploitation," I explained. "They instructed me never to disclose the house or the trust fund. They wanted to protect me from people who might try to take advantage, so they put everything in a trust until I was older." Kevin's mother was astonished. "Oh my God, Betty, you should have told us about your wealth. We had no idea you owned such a sizable house. We could all live very comfortably here." "Yeah, you should have shared that sooner," Kevin added, looking relieved but somewhat embarrassed. "We thought you were after our house. We could have avoided all the misunderstandings." "I always knew Betty was perfect for Kevin," his father chimed in, his tone now markedly warmer. "She's a great woman. Look how wealthy she is." Kevin found a great match. Their attitudes had shifted so quickly that it was almost dizzying. Even more bizarre was how they seemed to forget about the divorce papers I had brought. I pulled them out, signed them, and said, "Here's my signature for an uncontested divorce." You can just sign these to finalize things. If you want to fight, we can take this to court, but I won't be living with you anymore." "Wait, Betty, listen to me. There's no need to rush this," Kevin pleaded. "You've proven you're not a gold digger. There's no reason for a divorce anymore. We even apologize for the misunderstandings. That should make things better, right?" "Yes, Samuel is right," his mother added, her voice filled with regret. "We're sorry we doubted you." Despite their apologies and sudden change of heart, the clarity of their initial judgments and accusations lingered in my mind. It reinforced my decision to leave a relationship where trust had to be constantly proved rather than freely given. "I don't want your insincere apologies," I said firmly. "For 3 years, you allowed your family to berate me and label me a gold digger. I expected you to defend me, but instead, you sided with them and even accused me of the same. I can't stay with someone who doesn't respect his wife. I'm done, Kevin. We can part ways amicably or involve the courts. The choice is yours." Charlotte and Samuel tried desperately to change my mind, pleading with me to overlook the past, but their lack of genuine remorse only fueled my anger. When I reached my breaking point, I demanded they leave before I called the police. My firm stance intimidated them, and they left without further argument. Over the next few weeks, Kevin and his parents continued to harass me. They begged, pleaded, and even offered bribes to persuade me to stay. Their belief that money could sway my decision only intensified my fury. It was a stark revelation of their persistent view of me as someone motivated by financial gain. Ironically, since Kevin co-owned the house with his parents, I was entitled to half of his share, which only fueled their desperation for reconciliation. Despite their relentless attempts, I remained steadfast in my decision to part ways. I relocated all my belongings to my parents' house, asserting my right to stay there even before officially taking ownership. Kevin and his parents persisted in their attempts to reach me, prompting me to change my phone number to avoid their constant calls. Kevin even attempted to discuss matters at my workplace, but security was informed in advance and asked them to leave. Kevin still hadn't signed the divorce papers, holding out hope for a change in my decision. Nearly a year has passed and the situation remains unresolved, a testament to the complexity and emotional depth of our entangled lives. With less than a year remaining until the legal process is concluded, I've managed quite well on my own, finding both happiness and financial stability. While I've gone on a few dates, I'm not considering anything serious at the moment. According to a cousin of Kevin, his family is now worried about having to pay me my rightful share of the house. The legal fees are mounting, and their savings are insufficient. Kevin is even advocating for selling the house, harboring resentment toward his parents for the upheaval they've caused in his life. At this point, I simply don't care about their dilemmas. My only goal is to be free from that toxic family and move on with my life, leaving the chaos and negativity behind.